a giant cumulonimbus broke right above our heads. And so we were getting thunder and lightning, 0 seconds in between them. It was incredibly bright, incredibly loud. So then I start running, and I look to my right, and I see this big herd of cows. I'm like, you know what? If the cows are there, we're fine. They probably have instincts. They're going to run if there's lightning. So I'm running, and then there's one giant clap of thunder, and it's so bright. I have to kind of blink away all the fuzzies in my eye, and I look to my right, and 2 of the cows are dead.
No! I almost just made a joke about that.
Turns out cows are not a good... Cows have no instincts. They just died.
Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. I'm your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to my right is...
Hi, I'm Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chaunce.
Good to have you back, Chaunce.
Thanks.
It was weird having a second me here.
Been like 12... Oh, I thought you meant just like since yesterday.
Oh, that too. Good to see you. A few reminders before we get to today's interview. This is, we'll call it the second to last call for the Real Hiking Vikings beard shaving fundraiser. If we eclipse $10,000 for Feeding the Carolinas, Viking is going to shave his beard at our live podcast in Denver on December 7th. It's going to be epic.
Do we know what we're at?
As of this recording, we're so far behind, I don't think it's going to be relevant to share.
I'm just curious.
I would project that we're going to be right on the line. So if you're listening to this and you're like, should I, shouldn't I? You should. Mm-hmm. And if we do eclipse the $10,000 threshold, know that we are working on additional incentives to get more money to Feeding the Carolinas. So, the more money we put into this, the better. And we promise to make it worth your while. But yes,
we did say on the last episode that we would shave his head if we hit 20K. Some hiccups in that is that I think he will already have a shaved head. So
he called me. Oh, you were on that text thread.
Yeah.
So
I texted you about that text thread.
Oh, what did the text say?
Who's the other person on the text thread?
Oh yeah, I saw that part.
Yeah, you also answered.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, we're talking maybe tattoos. A lot of stuff's getting floated out there.
I think we should have someone come out who like owns a like nail salon or something where they do waxing and wax his chest or his back.
Ooh, Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah. I think that'd be gold.
That'd be fun. He's not as hairy as like you'd think he would be for how hairy he is.
It'll hurt.
It'll hurt.
It'll still hurt.
Yeah. We should do a Brazilian.
Okay.
But yes, please check out the link in the show notes for that fundraiser. Again, 100% of the money goes directly to Feeding the Carolinas. And to that point, if you haven't gotten your tickets to the Denver Live podcast, you have to. You definitely have to. It's going to be the podcast of the century. Mm-hmm. We've got Kyle Hates Hiking. He's going to unveil a brand new exclusive trail mystery on the podcast. Mm-hmm. We've got amazing raffle items, including a few Jolly Gear shirts that will be given out. Obviously,
new colors too.
New colors. These are the new colorways. Yep. We will be, all the raffle stuff will be going directly to the CDTC, by the way. So bring some cash or credit cards, money. Obviously, we're shaving Viking's beard. And then after that, we're doing the holiday hiker meetup. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a marathon.
Yeah, it is. You know what? Curbing season's over. We are in cuffing season as the weather changes, which is when people usually want to cuff up to another person and survive through winter in a...
Is this like a...
situationship?
Homo sapien mating?
No, it's
thing?
like a girl term.
Okay.
Curbing season is when spring comes. You want to have hot girl summer, so you usually kick your fling to the curb.
Got it.
And it's curbing season. So
is
everyone's
this rewarding
usually...
to Garrett?
No.
Because you're in cuffing season now.
Yes,
okay.
And we're engaged.
Yeah. Well,
we don't.
For the time being.
Yeah, these are single games.
We'll see how it goes when curbing season comes.
Okay. So curbing season is when people start to get that itch and you start to notice that all your friends, like, flings that they're in just, like, start dying out.
Yeah.
We are entering cuffing season, which is when it starts to get cold and you want someone to cuddle up with. And there's a lot of more indoor time, so you want someone to spend it with.
Are we promising cuddling? What's the conclusion here?
You're at a hiker meetup meeting other hikers. They share the same interests with you. They probably have also just done hikes. They're probably planning future hikes, and they are local to your area. It's a great time to meet new people and find someone to,
Can't say too much, but we did get a story of romance. That's
what I'm saying. It's a great place for romance without revealing too much.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. There was romance.
Romance can be found at these things.
Romance happened. Come to the podcast. It's going to be awesome.
Yes.
Katie, are you coming to the podcast?
I am now.
Yeah, good.
See, she's in for the romance.
Yeah. You sold it.
Also, if you guys want to support this podcast and or you want some exclusive bonus content, hit up our Patreon, patreon.com/backpackerradio. We try to do anywhere from 1 to 4 episodes per month. We'll be doing one today on tips for remaining safe as a solo female backpacker. Katie wrote the article on the trek, and we're going to go deep into that subject, and who knows where else we'll go. But yeah, we've done some fun Patreon content of late. Most notably, we did a guy stuff with Viking and Cuckoo where we were talking about taints.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, tip of the iceberg. But if you guys enjoy the show and you want some additional Backpacker Radio goodness, again, patreon.com/backpackerradio. Lastly, but not leastly, sitting across from a blogger here, if you're going to be taking on a long-distance backpacking trek in 2025, hit us up. The link to apply to join the Trek's blogging team is in the show notes. And 2025 is going to be the best year yet. We have a new marketing and community manager whose job is dedicated to making this as awesome as possible. So it was already awesome. It's going to get awesomer. That's a word. So yeah, head to the link in the show notes. Okay. Katie, I don't even know your trail name. I feel so bad right now.
It's Double Dip.
Double Dip. That's right. I did know that. Okay. I rescind my comment. I forgot your trail name. We were joined by Katie Double Dip Jackson, who's a thru-hiker, ultra runner, and writer for the Trek. After completing the CT in 2022 and John Muir Trail in 2023, Katie completed the Continental Divide Trail this year as her first leg of the Triple Crown. Katie, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
People should be familiar with your name because I think you've been featured probably the most of anyone ever, aside from Kelly, in the Trek propaganda segment. We feature your articles often on this podcast, so thank you for lending your voice in addition to your written words. Let's start with the origin story. What got you into the outdoors?
It's a long story, I guess, but it's really not that complicated. I had a family in Granby, Colorado growing up. It's where my grandparents were. My parents briefly were there as well. So I grew up around a lot of this stuff, but it felt very tangential. I would do hikes with my grandparents and hikes with my parents, but I don't know if we ever actually went backpacking until the summer after I graduated high school. We decided to hike the Salcantay Trail in Peru, just as a family, and it was about 100 miles, and we didn't even sleep in tents. We slept in little huts, which was lovely. And at the end of that, I knew that that was something I wanted to do more of, and the outdoors were really cool, and it was really rewarding to feel physically tired, but then get the really good views out of it. So I just knew I wanted to do more hiking, but I had never heard of the PCT or the AT. All I knew was the CDT from the time in Granby, which is about 30 minutes outside of Grand Lake, which the CDT passes through. So when I was in college, I decided I wanted to hike the CDT, and my dad said no. Because understandably, I didn't know what I was doing, and I had never gone backpacking, and he said it was way too dangerous. So he was aware of the intricacies of the CDT? No, I think I told him I'm going to be gone for 5 months living in a tent, and he said, you are not going to be doing that. Yeah. So the AT would have also not flew, potentially flown? Probably that one would have gone over a little better because it's less remote. But I had no interest in hiking the AT at that time. So I compromised with the Colorado Trail because it was shorter, and I don't think he was thrilled, but he was okay with it. Yeah. Also, I was 21, so there wasn't much he could have done.
Worst things a 21-year-old could be doing.
So I set out on the CT, had the best month of my entire life, and even before the hike was over, I knew that I would one day be back in that same spot to do the CDT. I don't know. It's just like a bug. You do one hike, and even if it was kind of short, you just know I'm going to be doing this for a while and trying to find a way to build my life around this very inconvenient hobby. Yeah. Inconvenient hobby. How does that work in with your 9 to 5? And what is your 9 to 5? I work in consulting. So it actually works fairly well because my job has very good benefits in terms of PTO and leave of absences. And I work from home, which is really nice, especially living in Colorado. I can just go out and do random hikes most afternoons if I wanted to. So the Colorado Trail, I was able to take PTO, and I scheduled it strategically in July because with the days off I had, plus weekends, plus the 4th of July, I had just enough time to finish the trail. It took 28 days, and on the 29th day, I was back to work. And then the Continental Divide Trail, they let me take a 5-month leave of absence to go and hike that. So I'm in the process of transitioning back to work now, which is strange, but exciting. I'm very excited to get a paycheck again.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
What do consultants do? Like, that's one of those titles where it's like, well, what does X job do? And then they kind of say the word as another word. Like, what does consulting do? Well, we consult. It's like, on what? Like, that's just one of those things that in my brain, I nod and I smile and I have no idea what you do.
I don't think that anyone knows.
Do you know?
A little bit, I think. Not as much as I should. In the broad umbrella term, companies will hire my company to help them solve problems that they either don't have the experience or the time and money to train someone else to solve. But my company's so large that it's so segmented, and what those problems are can be anything. So I'm specifically in the utilities practice. So the questions and the problems that companies typically hire us for are around sustainability and lowering their carbon emissions and trying to transition into sustainable renewable energy sources. So one client would maybe be trying to build a wind farm to power their company, but they don't know how to do that. And we have done that before, so we can help them along that process and plan out how that's going to work without them having to train anyone internally to figure that out.
That's a good explanation.
Did you get a degree in a relevant field, I assume?
Chemical and biomolecular engineering, which was tangential, but then I didn't want to work in oil and I didn't want to go to medical school, so I landed
here. Are those the two common paths for that degree?
Yeah.
Did you ever have ambitions to go to medical school?
Very briefly in high school, only because my sister was doing it and she's my hero. So for a while, I just thought I'd do whatever she did. But then when I learned what that meant, absolutely not.
Yeah. So somebody listening, because we're always curious about finding career paths that work congruently with long distance backpacking. It sounds like you have a pretty sweet setup. Would you recommend that to somebody listening to this that wants to follow in that track?
I really would. It's a really good setup to have. I definitely consider myself a work to live person instead of a live to work. So I don't know if I'm necessarily the most ambitious person out there with my career. I know there's a stereotype that consultants work really long hours, and that definitely can be true. I don't know if I do that, but it gives a lot of PTO, and at least the current setup, it seems like every 3 years I could take 5 months to go do another trail, which is pretty nice.
That's awesome. Go ahead.
Is there a, like, let's say I'm someone going into college, is there a major that's better to try to focus on if you want to be a consultant, or because consultants consult on all things, can you really do whatever you like and then you can just consult on that thing?
You can, for the most part, do anything. I think the most people that I saw get recruited out of college majored in something with engineering. What I was told during the recruitment process is they like to take engineering majors because that major teaches you how to think in a specific way. But I have friends at the company that majored in art history, one person who majored in drama. So I think it can be a very wide range.
Well, I had a question and then I got lost in your answer. Now the question's escaping me. Okay, it'll come back to me.
If you could consult Zach. Oh, no, now you go.
I've got it. In what ways do you think your engineering brain manifests in your hiking practices? Like, are you prolific with spreadsheets, or like what ways do you feel like you're preparing different compared to maybe like the average hiker because of your engineering background?
I was going to say not at all, and then you said spreadsheets. And I realized that I have so many spreadsheets. I think I like to visualize things a lot. So And I love to plan. Part of how I got excited for the trail was planning. So I definitely have multiple spreadsheets with plots and with graphs that are kind of useless. And you both would know. I mean, you plan all you want, and then you get out on trail and nothing goes the way you thought it was going to. And even knowing that, I just liked doing it anyway because it was kind of fun to build a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Are you getting into the nitty gritty? I assume you're building a spreadsheet of like your gear list. Like, are you doing like a pro and con of all the different options? Like, how deep down the rabbit hole are you going?
Definitely gear list. Planned out where I was going to resupply every single town along the way.
Is this just for the Colorado Trail or every hike?
Every hike.
Okay.
I haven't once stuck to the plan, but on the Colorado Trail, I planned out every single day and how far I would hike and where I would camp, and I was looking at far out in advance and figuring out where and night one I didn't camp where I thought I was going to, but it just makes me feel calmer to have that structure, even knowing that I'm not going to stick to it.
Yeah,
I'm that same way where I feel like it helps like channel the energy pre-hike because there's a lot of excitement and energy that you want to spend doing something, but it's not time to start hiking yet. So I do the same thing where I'll like list out all the resupplies, the mileage in between, and then I don't follow any of it. And then people are like, so you didn't need to do that. And then I'm like, well, it wasn't because I felt like I needed to.
It was fun.
But it gave me somewhere to channel this energy that got me excited for the trail in a way that I could contain.
And I was so nervous because this is my first long hike, the CDT was. I mean, I'd done the Colorado Trail, but I don't think it 1 month compared to 5 months, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to think about it. I didn't know how I was going to feel at any point. So it made me feel a little more in control to say, well, on night 36, I'm going to be camping on Mount Taylor. And then, even though, no, I didn't.
Which spreadsheets did you put together on the Colorado Trail that you didn't put together for subsequent hikes?
For the Colorado Trail, I mailed myself a lot of resupplies. So I had the spreadsheet of where I would stop, and then I almost had to follow it because I had boxes there. And it was pretty inconvenient. And anyone who's hiked the Colorado Trail knows that the towns have everything you need. There's really no reason to send a mail drop unless you have really specific dietary restrictions. So I got frustrated by that. When I got to Lake City, which I had mailed a box to, I realized that I would have much rather gone to Creede, and I couldn't because I had locked myself into going and picking up my mail. So for the CDT, I mailed as few boxes as possible and gave myself a lot more flexibility on which towns I would go to.
How many boxes did you send on the CDT?
I want to say, off the top of my head, probably about 5.
Okay.
I think I sent 1 to Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, 1 to Doc Campbell's, and 3 in New Mexico, Pie Town, Doc Campbell's, and Ghost Ranch. None in Colorado, none in Wyoming, none in Idaho. And then I tried to send myself a box to East Glacier at the very end, but the post office messed up and it got sent to my house in Denver. So I ended up resupplying in East Glacier anyways. It's doable. It was expensive, but it was doable.
If you could do it again, would you send boxes to the same places and have it arrive correctly the second time?
I would. I think I probably would still send a box to East Glacier just because it was pretty expensive. It was $7 a Pop-Tart, which
whoa,
is crazy.
Yeah.
But whatever. It was at the end. I'm clearly over it. But yeah, I think those were good places to send boxes. Doc Campbell's in Pie Town around the Gila, definitely a necessity. And then Ghost Ranch, you could have just pushed all the way through to Chama, but at that point I wasn't doing huge miles yet, and that would have been a pretty long, maybe 8-day resupply, which I personally didn't feel up to yet.
Would you have sent boxes to more places, or do you think 5 is the right number?
I think 5 is the right number. I'm still trying in my head to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, I'm forgetting stuff. Idaho was barren. I sent a box to Lima and Leadore in Idaho, both also very, very necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Actually, I think just factually, I don't think there were grocery stores in Lima or Leadore. So.
And I know you mentioned sending mail drops on the Colorado Trail being one of your regrets from your post about your 5 regrets of hiking the Colorado Trail. what stands out to you as the number 2 top regret from the CT specifically?
That's a good question. The Colorado Trail went so smoothly that when I was writing that, I kind of had to dig deep for regrets. I don't even know if I wrote about this, but I think I did my gear wrong. It was my first thru hike. I really wanted to be ultralight. I was going into it with a knee injury, so I was really prioritizing keeping my base weight low, but I also had never really been backpacking before in any long-term way, so I didn't know what gear I'd like, and I just picked at random from a lot of best budget ultralight gear lists and just ended up with a lot of things that were uncomfortable. And a lot of it was great gear. One of my biggest complaints was my Gossamer gear tent, which I know you use and so many people use, and it's wonderful. It just didn't work for me.
Why?
I didn't like the fabric. It was very stretchy when it got wet, and the year I did the Colorado Trail was a very, very rainy summer. It wasn't just the afternoon monsoons. It rained through the night, overnight, most of the nights, which for Colorado is crazy. But I would always wake up to the tent draped on my face and a very wet face.
So did you switch to DCF afterward?
Yes, I did.
Which shelter?
Durston.
Okay.
The X-Mid 1.
Yeah.
I also downsized. I used the 2. Then I switched to a 1-person tent. And I love it. I don't see myself changing from that.
Yeah.
How's the site selection for you with that tent? Because I've heard that it's hard to look at a spot and be like, this is where I'll put my tent because of the diagonal thing. It can be hard to guess your footprint. Did you notice that?
Very much, yes. I think on the JMT, I spent a lot of time pitching my tent, getting in my tent, getting out of my tent, and adjusting it. Because you look at it and you think it's going to be a perfect square, and then you're right, it's diagonal on the inside, so usually I would end up on some weird slant. Now I think after just enough pitches, I can look at the square and remember where the body goes inside. So I guess I've gotten over that, but that was definitely a gripe of mine for a few trips, but once I got used to it.
Yeah, how many times would you estimate you'd have to pitch that until you feel comfortable and you can predict exactly where you'll be laying your body?
I'm going to say 5 nights in a row.
Okay.
Because by the 5th night, you're so frustrated that you remember to pitch it in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to stay on the subject of CT regrets. What else do you got? There's more in here, by the way, if you want it.
Oh, I might get another margarita. Thank you. CT regrets. I have to drink these away.
I'll drink with you.
This wouldn't be a regret, but definitely a consideration. I had a massive tramley. I'm going to say maybe 11 people.
Whoa.
Huge. And it was so fun, and I love all of them so much. And most of us still are in very close contact, and it's great. I wouldn't have changed that for anything, but it did make things logistically more challenging, having to plan your hike around all of these other people's schedules. There were some places where I didn't send a mail drop, or I didn't have any reason to go to this town, but if someone in my tramley had sent a box there, we all had to go, or we had to split up. And it was definitely a huge consideration of structuring my hike, which was a solo hike. I didn't start with anyone, and I suddenly found myself sort of at the mercy of all these other people's schedules as well. Wouldn't have changed it. Definitely not a regret, but I do think my trail would have been structured a little bit differently had I not been hiking with so many people. I probably would have gone a little bit faster and gone into fewer towns. So I think that's just a consideration.
Yeah.
With 11 people, you have to have some drama.
Shockingly, no.
You don't have a single dramatic story.
I'm trying to think.
No one butt heads.
Not really. I know that's not fun, but
yeah, I don't believe you.
I think the CT is so short that by the time I started getting frustrated with people, because I'm an introvert, so spending that amount of time around people 24/7, I was absolutely going to get frustrated with people. But at that point, you're 3.5 weeks in, and then your brain kicks into, oh, I only have 7 more days left with these people. I have to really cherish this. So I'm guessing that's what happened with other people as well. But yeah, no drama.
Was it hard to find tent sites for
That was what I was
11,
gonna ask.
or were a lot of these like couples who were sharing a tent?
Only one of them shared a tent, but we did a pretty good job. And that's why I think I would have gone a little bit faster had I been alone. At the beginning of the day, we'd read all the comments and we'd find something 25 miles ahead where someone had said room for a small army. And we were that small army. So we camped together most nights.
Yeah. You also mentioned in that piece that your eating strategy evolved as you went on the trail.
Oh, yes. I was a runner going into it, and I'd never had to deal with trail food. And most of the trips I had done had been so short that I could do chorizo tacos and fun little meals where you actually are cooking, and obviously couldn't happen on the CT. So I went into it with a lot of goos and granola bars and things that I would eat while running, and quickly found that I could not choke it down. It was disgusting. And since I'd mailed myself all these boxes in advance, I was locked into it because I'd mailed all the goos ahead. It was pretty bad. That's right. That was a regret.
Yeah. You also mentioned that you were, I'm telling you what you wrote. You mentioned that you were reliant on like the 3 square meal per day philosophy, and that you noticed that, I'll let you put it in your words.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me of all the things I hated. Yeah, I did lock myself into, I had planned out my breakfast, my lunch, and my dinner, and then I didn't have any snacks in between because that's how I eat at home. I'm not a huge snacker, but you can't eat enough like that when you're through hiking. At least I can't for my body. So I would eat until I was absolutely stuffed for all 3 meals, but I still wasn't getting in the calories I needed because I wasn't snacking. So by the end of the trail, even though it was only a month, I had lost way too much weight because I had just crammed myself into this breakfast, lunch, dinner pattern, where luckily then for the CDT, I just ate probably every 2 hours I had a snack and didn't really have a breakfast or really a lunch. I would just be snacking all day and then have a massive dinner, and it worked a lot better. But the CT made me worried for the CDT about nutrition and keeping the weight on.
Yeah. You mentioned you noticed that like your mood would dip at the exact middle between meals.
I would get so mad at just people or places, or I'd have a moment of I'm gonna quit. I can't do this. I'm gonna go home, and then I'd have beef jerky and realize that I was fine actually.
Do you have any recollection of some of the things that made you unreasonably mad?
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. If you've ever hiked the CT, which I think you both have, Cochetopa Valley area is horrible. It was so bad. It was so hot. It's this moment where you've just left the Collegiate West section, you've gone through Salida, you spent a bunch of time in the Sawatch Range, beautiful mountains, and you know that what's coming next are the San Juan Mountains. So beautiful, so great, but you have 2 to 3 days of just flat, nothing, terrible, no water, cow pasture terribleness. And the flies, the days that I went through were horrific. They would land on you while you were moving. They would bite you through your clothes. The shirt that I wore was riddled with these tiny little blood stains all the way down my arms because the flies would just land on me and bite me through the shirt. And I just remember the flies. I was so mad because you can't do anything about it. I didn't carry bug spray, which, okay, maybe you can do something about it, and I didn't. But I didn't have bug spray. I didn't have a net. It was too hot to put on a sweatshirt. I was just walking, being eaten by these flies, and I was so mad. That just was horrible to me. I think my trail journal entry from that night was just all caps, like, ah!
Yeah, I started out doing the CT in segments, as I advised Trance to not do. And that was one where I just did that segment in, I think, like a 2-day span. So I did the long drive from the Denver area out there, did it as an out and back.
That is a brutal thing to drive to, knowing that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I was a little bit ignorant as to what the section actually was. And then, experiencing it, like wanting some of the Colorado Trail, like, lore, didn't get that. And then that's a bad section to run out of sunscreen, which I did.
Oh, no.
So it, like you were saying, it was hot. On the way back, I hiked with my rain jacket on because I didn't have like a sun hoodie or anything like that. So it's probably 92 degrees. I'm hiking in my rain jacket, just absolutely sweating my ass off because it provided the most sun protection after I ran out of sunscreen. Yeah, I also did not enjoy that section.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I was so desperate for water because there's no water, and the water that there is covered in cow shit. So no water, but I knew that there was that Cochetopa River, the really big river, towards the end of the day. And so we pulled our first 30-mile day of the trail just to go get this really beautiful water, and you can hear it as you come up to it. And I was hot and sweaty and miserable, bleeding from these fly bites, and ran into the river. It was wonderful, just fully clothed, absolutely submerged, came out, and I had leeches all over me. I know.
No.
Horrible,
No.
horrible. So then I had to spend 10 minutes just picking leeches off of me. Oh, I have nothing good to say about this section.
What do they feel like? Are they like slugs? Like, do they feel like slugs?
They feel like slugs, maybe for the best, maybe for the worst. I didn't feel them on me at all. Absolutely no sensation from the actual leech on the body, which is great because it wasn't painful, but that's bad because then all night I was wondering if I had more leeches on me that I didn't know about. But picking them off, they were just like like slugs.
Have you guys seen the movie Stand By Me?
No, I'm thinking of, what was the movie I saw that was full of leeches as a kid that scared me?
There's a scene in that movie where like a bunch of boys jump into a body of water and come out and find that they've got leeches all over their bodies. And one of them like pulls forward their whitey tighties and looks down and finds one on his.
That was the nightmare.
Yeah.
The movie I watched as a kid that had also boys jumping in water and coming out covered in leeches was The Amazing Panda Adventure. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
It's a wonderful movie. 1995. A young American boy visiting China helps his zoologist father rescue a panda cub from unscrupulous poachers while its reserve is threatened with closure from officious bureaucrats.
And there are leeches?
Yeah, at some point when they're running away, the boy has this panda, and he's like running away from the poachers through the woods with this panda. It's like a panda cub. And they jumped in the water for something to hide from the poachers, and they came out and they were covered in leeches.
Ugh.
I gotta rewatch this. I'm watching the trailer on silent right now, and it was a great movie.
I do think that river ruined skinny dipping for me for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I got the trail name because I really liked skinny dipping in the lakes and rivers of Colorado. And then after that moment, I still do it, but every time it's in my head, I'm like, oh my God, there are leeches in this water.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't catch a leech and it just like goes unnoticed sucking your blood? Does it just get really fat and fall off?
I think it's like a tick. This is not based on fact. This is based on vibes, but I'm guessing it's like a tick where it'll just drink its fill and then leave, but probably there's risk of infection and illness, and they can't be that sanitary.
And they like water, so if like they have their fill and now you're not near water, they're kind of screwed too.
There's just like a 40-pound leash crawling on the trail after it sucked you dry.
I will say, and this is horrible, but if I had to hear it, you guys do too. Someone in my tramily this summer taught me that leeches can actually leave the water and they can exist on really high grasses. So if you're walking through kind of a marshy field and there are long grasses overgrown on the trail, there can be leeches in there.
Is it painful to remove from your body?
A little bit, I guess. I had my credit card with me, so I kind of just sliced the credit card under and separated them. I think I was so freaked out and so hopped up on adrenaline.
Yeah.
I just wanted them off. I don't remember it feeling like anything.
Yeah. The bitter irony is I ended up doing that section 3 times that year because then I ended up hiking from Durango to Leadville in one go, so I got to do it a third time.
That's horrible.
Yeah. It was actually better the third time. I don't know. The weather was better, so not doing it 90 degrees was nice.
I was dreading that section on the CDT, and then I don't know if it was just New Mexico was so tough and so hot, flat, dry, dusty cow poop water that I was desensitized, but I definitely was laughing at myself for how much I was dreading Cochetopa Valley, and then it was over in a day and a half, and it kind of made no impression on me. And it was earlier in the season, so there were no flies, no cows.
Yeah. And you had
little
snacks.
Bit more water, and I had snacks.
There you go. That fixes everything. Okay, so you did the CT in 22. Your dream was to do the CDT. We're going to get to that. In between the two, you do the John Muir Trail. Is that because you hadn't accrued enough PTO to make the CDT happen?
Yes. I wanted to do something. JMT felt like the natural next step. I had a couple members of my family from the CT. We were all going to go do it together. It ended up being so bad. I know the JMT is beloved, and I am happy for other people for experiencing that. I hated it.
Why?
Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. We also, so this was 2023, which was the really historically high snow year in the Sierra. So it was still really hard, even late in the summer. I ended up tearing my meniscus and getting a concussion, and then getting hit by Hurricane Hillary, and then getting really bad food poisoning and then getting super dehydrated from the really bad food poisoning, and then started peeing blood, and it was horrible. And then we rolled into VVR to wait out the hurricane, and the woman who was checking us in, I have very foggy memories of this, but I've been kind of clued in from the people I hiked with. So we checked in, and the woman behind the counter was like, "You don't look so good." And I was like, "I don't feel so good." And she gave me some pills. I don't know what. Took the pills, and then I went into our little cabin for the night, and I slept for 18 hours.
Wow.
And then I was okay. Then I was
Sounds like
fine.
she gave you some sleeping pills.
I think there was an Imodium kind of hidden in there as well.
Sounds like a fun cocktail. I know you also did a post about comparing the Colorado Trail and the John Muir Trail. Just flat out, which trail is better is the title of the article. Pulling aside your experience, because you already mentioned that kind of everything went right on the CT and everything went wrong on the JMT, I know it's got to be very difficult, if not impossible, to remove your bias from it, but which of the trails is better in your opinion?
Even totally removing bias, objectively done, it's removed. I think the Colorado Trail was so much better. And it might have been the year I did it. There were so many fun people to meet, whereas on the JMT, maybe it was the high snow year, but we didn't really meet anybody. We only met maybe 3 other hikers the entire time. We met 5 hikers. 3 of them were PCT people. One of them was doing the JMT and became a very good friend of mine, and then we just saw one other person. But that was kind of the entire social scene of the whole trail. Whereas on the CT, tons of people, tons of friends. And I think the San Juans are just my absolute favorite place in the entire world. So nothing to me, the Sierra just can't, in my mind, live up to the views of the Colorado Trail. I will say, in defense of the JMT, the Colorado Trail has incredibly beautiful sections, a little bit interspersed by Cochetopa Valley, or the first 4 or so segments down by Waterton that maybe aren't anything to write home about, but the JMT is consistently beautiful the whole way. But I think the Colorado Trail at its best is better than the John Muir Trail at its best.
Hot take.
That is a hot take. Now that you've done the full CDT, would you still say that the San Juans are your favorite mountain range?
Yes.
Yeah?
100%.
Even above the winds?
I also didn't love the winds.
Oh,
Really?
another hot take.
It was also because of extenuating circumstances. I was injured going into it. I was able to do Cirque of the Towers, but my ankle and foot couldn't support me to do Knapsack Col, so I didn't get to do all the alternates I wanted to do, and I didn't get to go into the Tetons, which a lot of people do. So I was pretty injured at that point. It's the only section of the trail where I was thinking I was going to have to quit. My foot wasn't weight bearing. And it just, I think mentally was a terrible time. They were beautiful, but also it was so short. You go in outside of Lander, you pretty quickly get into the mountains, and you know that you have a long 7 or so day food carry to Du Bois, but only 3 of those days are in the mountains, and then you're on Forest Service roads. So maybe I didn't do my research, but we had a Forest Service road, and I had a moment of, oh, okay, I guess that's it. Whereas the San Juans, you're fully in them from Chama until Spring Creek Pass, which is like 2 weeks later. So
yeah. Is there anything else about the JMT that you want to touch on before we just dive full into the CDT?
let's go CDT.
Okay.
I'm fine to forget about the JMT.
Yeah. Because that was your dream. That was the thing that you wanted to do first. Dad said no. Oh, did it take much convincing after you'd done the Colorado Trail and the JMT for him to be okay with you doing?
I think there's no convincing to be done, really, just because I was an adult. So it was more of I was letting him know I was going to do it, but he definitely was more comfortable with the idea after seeing me do the CT and to a lesser extent the JMT, where we'd worked out how Garmin's work and how he can track me and that not everyone who hikes dies. And
Are you texting him every day from the Garmin just to keep him?
Yeah. I have a morning check-in and evening check-in because he's also worried about dead trees falling in the middle of the night, which is fair.
Yeah.
So I had I'm camping here, and then I lived through the night, and I'm leaving.
Yeah. Did you ever have any issues with the satellite communicator about messages not going through? I use the spot device on the PCT, and that you don't text from that. It just gives like automatic pin drops of your location. And for whatever reason, mine would cut out for like days at a time. And for me, that created more panic than it alleviated, because it's like, why are we not hearing from you at this point? Did you ever run into any issues like that?
Sometimes in towns, he would have texted me and said, I haven't been getting pin drops. And it's kind of the same. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. I'm sorry about that. I can't do anything about it. But it was always very reliable in sending messages. You had to sit still for a bit, so I couldn't send anything while I was on the move. If I had forgotten to send my morning check-in, I would have to just fully stop and sit down for 5 minutes to let it send. It wouldn't work if I were walking, but I think there's not enough tree cover. I've heard of people having issues on the AT, but CDT, it was pretty good.
Yeah. Have either of you tried the new iPhone feature about being able to text from satellite? I know they announced it earlier this year, and it is available now. And I haven't actually tested it myself. Have either of you guys?
I haven't.
No. Potential sponsor.
iPhone? Yeah.
On principle, I spend too much on my Garmin subscription, so I think I need to pretend that the iPhone thing doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. Okay, CDT. So I want to know, I remember communicating with you early on, and it sounded like New Mexico was kicking your ass a little bit. Is that an accurate portrayal?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
New Mexico sucked. And I knew it was going to suck. And it didn't suck as much as I thought it was going to. But it sucked. It was hard. It was flat, so it made you feel like you should be going 30s right off the bat, but then it was also so hot, no water, really hard packed ground, hard on your body. It was the kind of hiking that just made you feel bad because you weren't going that far and there wasn't that much to look at and you didn't feel like you were accomplishing anything. You were just sweaty and sandy and dirty and disgusting and uncomfortable. I wear contacts when I hike, and every night when I would take them out, there was sand underneath my contacts. If I clenched my teeth together, it was crunched. Like sand was everywhere.
Yeah. I know you also lost your hiking partner pretty early on.
I did. That also really sucked. I started with one of my friends from Denver, and we had met on the CT, so we knew that our hiking styles were compatible, and it was going to be great, and we had spent over a year planning for this and getting excited for this, and she ended up getting a stress fracture in her femur about 2 weeks in.
It's a bad bone to get a stress fracture.
It's a bad bone. That was not really one that you can walk off. It was hard. It was obviously harder for her, but it was tough to navigate our friendship and our ideas of the hikes while we were still in that waiting game. For a while, she thought it was hip flexor tendonitis. She thought if she took a few days off, she could get back on the trail. And it was a hard thing to navigate, hard thing to communicate about of, yes, we planned to do this hike together and we wanted to finish this hike together, but we also both individually wanted to do this. And at what point are you... We had agreed before the trail that we would stick together unless it compromised the integrity of someone's hike, which is great to say, but we didn't have any idea of what that meant. And we kind of hit this point where I think she wanted me to take some time off with her in Albuquerque while she was recovering, and I wanted to keep going. And it's like, what is that compromising the integrity of a hike? Like, who's to say? So it was a tough few days while we figured out what was going on. And then obviously it was worst case scenario if she was going to go home and couldn't finish the hike. But it was hard. New Mexico is not a state that I would want to do alone. There's a lot of downtime while you wait out the heat. So it was nice to have someone, a built-in friend to hang out with. And then it just was also, I don't know, I care about her. She's my friend. I wanted to see her succeed and be happy with what she wanted to do. And it was hard to feel like I couldn't support her. Understandably, I think I was the last person she wanted to talk to then, because I was still on the trail. But that was hard.
In retrospect, knowing that something like an agreement where you say, as long as it doesn't compromise the integrity of one of our hikes, is rather vague. If you were to start a trail that's a long trail with a friend again in the future, how would you, or would you / how would you specify something like that more to kind of cover different scenarios that could happen? Or would you just say the same thing?
I think I would never start a hike with a friend again with the expectation that we are hiking the trail together. Especially the CDT, there's so many choices to be made that even if nothing had gone wrong injury-wise, I'm sure we would have hit a point with the Creede cutoff or name any alternate where you just want to do different things. And I probably will just approach future trails a little bit selfishly and say that I would love to hike together for as long as it's easy to do so, but we might split up and come back together. And I don't think I'll ever start a hike tied to one person with the expectation that I'm going to be camping with them every night.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Especially like you mentioned on the CDT where there's so many different options. That's tough. Were you guys in a bigger group at the point where the injury happened, or was it just the two of you?
It was us and one other guy, and he was great. So I had just gotten injured right before this happened. So I had just spent about a week in Albuquerque getting antibiotics, and I had a very gross toe infection, not to brag. So he had actually come to Albuquerque. All three of us went to Albuquerque, and then this guy, Will, and I ended up getting back on the trail while Wrong Way stayed in Albuquerque to try to figure out what was going on with her hip. And that was probably also partly why I didn't want to take more time off while she was healing, as I had already been off trail for about 5 days. And that's kind of the amount of time where I feel like you start losing a lot of the endurance and muscle that you've gained from through hiking. So I didn't want to get back on trail and have to start all the way back over at 10-mile days. So he ended up getting back on the trail with me. He was great for coming to Albuquerque. Nothing was wrong with him. He just wanted to hang out. And then we pretty quickly ended up meeting up with the people that I would go on to hike all the way to Canada with. So it worked out. I wasn't really ever alone, but for the most of it, I was with a large group anyway, and that made it a lot easier.
Yeah. Are you and Wrong Way on good terms now?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
She's great. She lives in Denver. We live less than 10 minutes apart, so
yeah.
We've hung out a couple of times, and she's hiking the trail next year, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
She's going to be a blogger.
Yeah.
Madeline Ducart, check it out.
Would you feel comfortable now going into the CDT knowing that you would potentially do it solo? Like, would you want to start with a hiking partner, or would you be okay with just starting by yourself, knowing that there's a chance that you could be doing New Mexico by yourself?
I would feel very comfortable starting alone. I know not many people do the CDT, but the weather range for starting is so narrow that at least the day I started, there were 14 other people in the van to the border with me. And it seemed like on 1 week on either side, it was 15 people a day every day. So there are a lot of people. Definitely if I had started alone but didn't want to be alone, there are so many people to hike with. And I would be absolutely comfortable now starting alone.
Did you go to kickoff?
Yes.
How was that?
Super fun. Actually, no. It kind of sucked. It was fun in theory. I think a lot of people had started at the border and then hiked to Silver City for trail days, and it was great. And I started the day after trail days. So I was going from Silver City down to the border, and I was just ready to start, and I was ready to go. And then you see all these hikers come in, and they have just gone through arguably the most challenging section of the trail, and they all looked terrible. And they all looked miserable and sunburned, and the blisters I saw were crazy. And so it rattled me a little bit. 48 hours away from the start of my trail, you're seeing all these people come in. People quit at trail days. People went to the hospital because they had infected blisters. It was just not mentally necessarily what I would have wanted to see. But if I could go back now, I'd tell myself, like, that's the worst of it. You're fine. It's going to be okay. You're going to look bad too. It's fine.
Would it be a good plan to try to hike into the kickoff? That way you're coming through a bad section, but you've got something to look forward to. Is the event something to look forward to?
I thought it was great. It definitely is not as big as it is for the AT or PCT. I thought it was fun. It was mostly a vendor booth situation. I've actually never been to PCT or AT trail days, but those seem to have a little bit more activities to do. This had some really interesting talks, but it was largely in the town square of Silver City. A bunch of vendors had set up, and you would just kind of walk around. It was great for meeting people who were going to be on the trail. So few people ended up hiking Nobo that I think by the end everyone knew each other. So it was great to get those connections and relationships started there. But a lot of people didn't go, and I don't think they felt like they missed anything, but I'm happy I went.
Yeah.
When we had crossed paths in Wyoming,
Yes.
I remember you and someone else were talking about the water in New Mexico.
Yes. It is both as bad and over exaggerated as people talk about. There are some really nasty water sources, and they were the pictures that I had seen before starting the trail. I will say, if you are willing to carry a little bit more, I had a 4-liter capacity through New Mexico. If you're willing to carry a little bit more, willing to do some longer dry stretches, if you're even willing to dry camp, you can avoid most of the bad stuff.
Really?
The pictures I had seen of the just absolutely nasty stuff, I also would walk past it and take a picture and go, ooh, and then keep going. Like, it's not as bad. Again, I've never hiked the AT. I've never hiked the PCT. Maybe I'll do those and realize that it actually was really bad compared to those two. But I never had... that's not true. I had maybe 3 bad water sources. But no one I knew got Giardia. And no one was sick. I just carried Skittles powder and made everything...
Skittles powder?
Yeah,
I've never heard of this.
Skittles powder?
It's like electrolytes, but without the electrolytes, and it just is sugar. And
is it called Skittles powder?
Yeah.
Shut up.
It's so good. It's like little
Google.
Skittles, like the fruit punch powder you can just put, it's that, but it's Skittles branded.
Skittles powder.
Well, we've got some element to give you.
It
so
sounds like a code word for like drugs or something. Jesus, it's Skittles powder.
Yeah, I was carrying Skittles powder from the Mexican border.
Where did you find this?
The Dollar General in Lordsburg.
Really?
It was disgusting. Like, it's not good, but it's so strong that the particularly bad water sources, I just would put in a green Skittles powder, and I had a little googly eye on my Smart Water bottle, so it's my Mike Wazowski water, and it just tasted like green apple Skittles.
They have
Too
sport
much.
Skittle powder.
Oh.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
all sport, 0 powder, stick.
It must just be
Skittles.
the same thing with electrolytes. Maybe some
Maybe.
B vitamins or something.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll give you some elements when you leave soon.
I have never used electrolytes, which is probably wrong, but
Well, I can only assume that it's much better than Skittles powder.
I just got hooked on Skittles powder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Skittles. I should talk their powder, but
No, you can shit talk their powder.
It
It's pretty
sounds
bad.
cool. I would try it.
It's great. Like, it was great for the moments when I needed it, and then at no point was I just drinking regular water in Colorado from clear rivers and thinking like, oh, this needs Skittle powder.
yeah,
Yeah, sure.
you're using it exclusively to mask the terribleness of the water.
I remember I used a Garmin message because I just felt like the world needed to know. I texted my boyfriend from the satellite phone and said, I just filtered water that even after filtering tasted like someone ate scrambled eggs and then farted 1,000,000 times.
Ew.
What a picture.
It was disgusting. But I did learn a cool trick too late. I already drank the water. But someone told me that if you are drinking water that has a lot of sulfur in it, if you shake the bottle and then let it sit for 30 minutes and then take the cap off, you get a little as the gas comes out, the sulfur will rise to the top, and then it won't taste as scrambled egg farty.
Yeah, that's a nice little tip.
Yeah. Huh. I hate those water sources. That's like one of the reasons I don't want to do the CDT as a through hike, is just like memories of the PCT desert.
I'm trying to think of the worst water that I had on the PCT, and I don't think anything even rings that bell for me.
So this is when I was hiking with my friend. I started with a friend on the PCT, and she was not fazed by that stuff. Whereas, like, I was like, I'll just die. Like, how about I just die?
Yeah.
I just will not drink the water. I'll get dehydrated. You'll find me in a bush somewhere, and I'll die. And so she would take my dirty water bottle, bless her heart, to some of these dirty water sources and skim past the mossy green mold top and scoop it so that I wouldn't have to see where it came from.
There was one water source that we had seen on Far Out a day in advance. People had been calling it the shit pit because it was a massive water tank but surrounded by cows, and the water had overflowed. So it had a moat around it that the cows had just been shitting in.
Oh, no.
So if you could get to the water, it was actually really wonderful water, but you had to, someone had put these little plastic buckets down that you could step over to get to the shit pit or get over the shit pit. And the day we got there, it was my friend Hamilton's birthday, and my birthday present to her was that I took her water bag and I navigated the shit pit to go get her water so she didn't have to do it.
I'd be telling people it was my birthday too.
I think I found a picture. I think the worst water source I had to drink from was that where there was no actual water in the tire, so you had to scoop from the ground around the tire.
Yeah, that's just pure mud.
Yeah.
It was just mud. I would like to think it was mud.
Is there a spring? Is there a spring or something in the tire, or how does the water get into the tire?
I have no idea. I assume a spring, but then there's nothing in the water. I don't know. A lot of the water sources had a weird quirk to it, but then the water was fine. The comments would be like, there are a lot of bees in the water, but once you filter out the bees, it's okay. And you'd show up and you'd be like, yeah, I guess that is pretty clear water full of bees.
How reliable were the sources? Like, if I saw the shit pit and I was just like, no, and I had extra water with a, something like a 4-liter carrying capacity, or, you can bring extra bags. If I were planning a day and I saw, okay, in 20 miles from here is the shit pit, in 35 miles from here is seemingly good source, just bees, is that something that I can rely on, or is it you're getting to places that you thought would have water and there's just nothing there?
People were really good about keeping the water sources in New Mexico specifically updated, probably because it was so few and far between. The biggest gamble you would have to take is there are a lot of unofficial water caches where some just kind person will leave water on the side of the road. And people will comment, I got here a day before and there's 10 liters left. And then you just have to guess, is 10 liters going to be gone in 24 hours? But the actual water sources that weren't the unofficial caches, really up-to-date information. But there were so few, I don't think I ever skipped a water source that was even a little bit edible. Because it would be more like you have one water source today and it's 20 miles in, and then the next water source is going to be 20 miles past that. Yeah. So it was so hot.
It's so funny because when you're in the moment, like, obviously I would just take the water and get on with my life. But sitting here, not on a trail, not in that position, I'm like, ew, no, don't want to do that, It
was a much smaller deal than I had built it up to in my head.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier and less gross than I had expected.
Do you recall the longest distance stretch that you went between water sources?
Yes, weirdly, not in New Mexico. It was in Idaho, or maybe Montana. I don't remember. But it was 30 miles. And it's just later in the season, and we had passed a lot of sources that had clearly been flowing at some point, but had dried up. It was in Montana. It was between Helena and Lincoln, Montana. There was a 30-mile stretch with no water. But the SOBOs clearly had not had a 30-mile stretch. So
Yeah.
earlier in the year, there must have been something.
So you were able to do that stretch with just 4 liters?
After New Mexico, I sent home my CNOC, so I had 2 liters.
Whoa.
But yeah, we just did the stretch in one go. Most people only had 2 liters. At that point, I guess the nice thing about it being later in the trail is you're moving fast, and the terrain was not that challenging. So I loaded up 2 liters and cameled a liter, and then just kept going.
Yeah.
It was fine.
It
wasn't as hot either.
Are you anxious about dehydration at all, given your experience on the JMT?
So anxious. That is so anxious. Less anxious now than I was at the start of the CDT. Through New Mexico, and maybe that's why I didn't skip any water sources, but I was crazy hydrated. I would drink a liter at every single source and then pack out my 4 liters and drink it all before the next one. Dehydration almost took me off the JMT, and I think part of the fear of starting NOBO is if you get injured early on, you had to go through the boot heel and you had to go through the desert, and you don't get to the San Juans, and you don't get to experience northern New Mexico, and it feels like you've invested time and energy and effort and pain in a section that doesn't give much back to you, and then you don't get to the rewarding stuff. So I was very vigilant.
Yeah. All right. So the New Mexico stretch up until the beginning of the San Juans, on a 1 to 10 scale, what grade are you giving it?
I would separate it from the border to Cuba.
Okay.
3.
Okay.
From Cuba to Chama, or Cuba to the Colorado border, 8. Like, it's beautiful. You have this moment from Cuba to Ghost Ranch where you're hiking through the desert, but it's beautiful desert. You have canyons and all of these cool rock formations, and then you have this big climb out of Ghost Ranch, out of this canyon, and people tell you that it marks the end of the desert, but it's so sudden. You are looking at your feet because it's a steep climb and it's hot, and then you realize there's a tree near you, and trees are pretty rare, so you're like, oh, there's a tree, and then you look up and you realize you're in a pine forest, and you just never go back into the desert ever again. It's a very sudden switch from I am walking out of a canyon in the sand to I'm in a forest covered with pine needles, and I will never go back.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
I gather you're happy to get out of the desert.
So happy.
Yeah. Yeah, so walk me through the next section of trail for you.
So from Cuba to Ghost Ranch, unfortunately, that was the only fire closure we really had to deal with on the trail. Or fortunately, I mean, I know we got very lucky with fire, but that was a 30-mile highway walk from Cuba to Ghost Ranch. So it did suck for me, but the trail, in theory, is beautiful between the two. And then from Ghost Ranch to Chama, it looks like Colorado, but without mountains, I guess. You can see them in the distance, which is cool. And it's your first moment of realizing that you can see Colorado from New Mexico. But it's still pretty flat walking, but there are aspen everywhere. And pine trees, and you start to get a lot of snow melt, and you start to get snow as well, which the snow was pretty frustrating, but the snow melt was wonderful. There were no bees. And it feels like the first sections of the Colorado Trail almost, where it's not necessarily much to look at, but it's just peaceful. You're kind of walking through a forest, and you know that in 5 days you'll be in Colorado, which it's like a shot of serotonin.
How much snow did you encounter?
A decent amount. So this year I think had a average to slightly below average snow year in the San Juans, but then everywhere else in Colorado, a really, really, really high snow year. So from
a CDT perspective, that's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, I could have done without the really high snow year in northern Colorado.
Okay.
But all things considered, I would much rather have a lower snow year in the San Juans. And even still, I mean, it was still really hard hiking. I kind of don't know how people do it with more snow. We were one of the first groups to get through the San Juans. We entered on June 1st and spent probably a week, maybe a little bit less than a week, getting to Pagosa Springs, and then a little bit less than a week from Pagosa Springs to Spring Creek Pass. And it was the hardest hiking I've ever done in my entire life. I personally loved it because I really love Colorado, and I was so excited about rejoining the Colorado Trail. And I felt like I had all this motivation from external sources. The people I was hiking with, I think, didn't like it as much. My takeaway, again, without knowing anything, just vibes, is that on the PCT, it is easy to not face any snow if you start late enough or if you hit the Sierra late enough. I had been talking to a friend who had done the PCT, and she had told me that the ice axe was like a fashion accessory where she didn't use it a single time, but everyone carried one. And at least on the CDT, when I went through, it was you needed to know how to use your ice axe because you used it a lot. So I think that's a big piece of advice I'd give to anyone looking to do this CDT is really familiarize yourself with snow travel and winter travel and how to use your gear safely. There were a lot of people who were learning how to use their ice axe that first week out of Chama, and that must have been really scary. There were some sketchy moments, and so that's not the spot that I would want to learn how to use that.
When did you learn how to use it?
I don't know. Recently, that's not like I've been an expert forever. My boyfriend lives in Boston, so we do a lot of hiking in the White Mountains, and I'm not a huge fan of Boston, so every time I go visit, we go to the White Mountains. And so if I go visit in January, we go to the White Mountains. So I think maybe the first time I used my ice axe was in the Whites, during some winter hikes. And then Wrong Way, the friend I started with, she and I intentionally did a lot of trips out to Rocky Mountain National Park to learn how to use the ice axe. And I did some winter 14ers. I don't know. It did feel like a very intentional, I'm starting this trail in 6 months. I have to learn how to use this axe.
And when you say use it, are you talking about you're using it for self-arresting or you're cutting steps, or what specifically?
Just nothing crazy mountaineering, just self-arresting. I think a lot of snow travel is weight distribution. So a lot of learning how to hold the axe on these traverses so that I don't slip and have to self-arrest. But then if I do have to self-arrest, to know how to do it.
Did you have to self-arrest?
Yes.
Many times?
Many times intentionally. Did a lot of glissading. 3 times, I think, unintentionally. One of them, I got pretty beaten up. I'm not an expert at all in winter hiking. It's not something I particularly enjoy, nor something I'm particularly good at, but it was a good skill to learn. There was right before San Luis Peak, which is the last moment that you're probably going to face snow in the San Juans because you descend from that into Cochetopa Valley. There was this big couloir with ice on it that just pure stupidity. I stepped wrong on the traverse and I just slid right down the ice and I was completely out of control. And luckily I had my ice axe leash on. Actually, you know what? The ice axe didn't help. I stopped because I hit rock. I was in the process of bringing my ice axe close to me to stop, and then I just hit rock. And
that sounds painful.
Yeah. I had these massive just cuts and bruises from my left knee all the way up to my shoulder. It was like the whole side of my body got rug burn, or I don't know. I was so bruised, very bloody. But it was okay. And then there were a couple other times that I would slip on a traverse and just quickly I had my axe near my chest and I could dig it in. But it was surprising to me that this was a low snow year in the San Juans. And I'm very impressed by people who've gone through in higher snow years.
When you're telling people like this specific story, like, okay, this happened to me, I slipped bloody from my knee to my shoulder, is it like, oh my God, are you okay? Or is it like, oh, cool, yeah, I had done that the other day? You know, like, is everyone getting just tossed and turned this way?
Everyone's getting a little bit beaten up, but in a way, and usually, and I don't mean to put anyone in my family on blast, in a way that everyone who got hurt, it was a little bit their fault. Not in a bad way. Like, it was my fault that when I was doing that traverse, I wasn't holding my ice axe properly, and I was thinking that it was the last traverse I was going to have, and so I was just I didn't stop to put my spikes on because I was lazy. So everyone was always concerned about it because it seemed like a crazy thing. It was like, oh, you fell there? How did you fall there? But I do think everyone was a little bit battered and bruised by the end. Nothing serious. I had one friend, and this is the guy that came to Albuquerque with us, where this is actually really scary to watch. So there's a Montezuma Peak in the San Juans. The trail goes over this big bowl. So if you get there later than 8 p.m. or 8 a.m., you're fine because it's a very easy glissade. Pretty fun. It's pretty steep, but a lot of runoff at the bottom, and you can just glissade down. But we got there at 5 in the morning because we had been doing a lot of really early morning hiking while things were still frozen because it was less post-holing. And he slipped while trying to walk down the bowl. And so he didn't have his axe. He dropped his poles, and he was just hurtling towards this frozen river at the bottom. And he dug his hands into the ground, and he flayed his hands. It's like the best way I can describe it. He couldn't put his socks on for a while. Like, he just ripped absolutely all of the skin off of his knuckles and fingers and palms. Like, that one was gnarly, and that one was scary to watch because you see him hurtling towards the river, and you're like, if you hit that river, like, that's not haha funny. I'm gonna call SOS, and it's probably too late funny.
So him digging his hands into the ice is the thing that stopped him, or
it's what stopped him.
Wow.
But then he sort of lost all the skin on his hands.
Yeah.
Like picking my skin while you're talking about it.
Would you rather? Yeah. Yeah, yikes. Was there ever a thought that he'd have to get off trail because of that?
No. I think we got to Pagosa, and he cleaned it out, and he got some help putting his socks on every day, and it ended up healing. But I don't know. My takeaway from the San Juans is, one, if you can make it from Chama to Pagosa, that is the hardest part. So if you are sitting in Pagosa and you're thinking, that was really hard, I didn't enjoy the hiking in the snow, I'm kind of over it, and I'm thinking about taking the Creede cutoff, you have already done the hardest part. And if you just hike from Pagosa, not on the Creede cutoff, you stay on the red line, it's going to be easier. Because I know that was a decision I was really grappling with. I really didn't want to take the Creede cutoff because I wanted to hit the point where you reconnected with the Colorado Trail, and I also just love the San Juans. I wanted to spend all this time there, but I was so over it. It was such hard hiking, and then I didn't take the cutoff, and I'm really glad I didn't because it got easier, and the snow melts so quickly. So even from when I entered the San Juans to when I left the San Juans, there was so much less snow. Yeah, so I would say if you can make it from Chama to Pagosa, you're golden. Know how to use an ice axe. Know how to use your spikes. And there is nothing dangerous that can't be avoided.
When you say that a lot of the people that had to self-arrest and use their ice axes, it was partially their fault, a lot of people will go from like the PCT to the CDT. Mm-hmm. People will watch YouTube videos on how to use an ice axe. Like, assuming someone knows in theory how to use an ice axe, which I assume the people in your family probably did, mm-hmm. you still reach a certain level of comfort after hiking a certain number of miles where things start to ease up a bit, maybe, or you've got some confidence under you that can cause you to do something dumb that might lead you into that situation. What would your advice be to other people that isn't just like learn how to use an ice axe, but now that you know how to use an ice axe, what are some things that an upcoming hiker could do to avoid silly mistakes? Like, what are some of the silly mistake causes?
I think you hit it kind of right on the head, where you get more comfortable with it, and so you approach these traverses less carefully. And sometimes it doesn't matter, where if you fall on a traverse, it's fine. You'll slide down and you have to spend an hour climbing your way back up, and it's really frustrating, and that's terrible, but you're going to be safe. And then there are the traverses where you look at the bottom and you realize that if you slip and you fall, you're going to be hitting something at the bottom that's you're not going to be okay. So I think just not getting overconfident with it, because that's why I fell. It was just pure overconfidence and stupidity, and I said no judgment to the people. I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's their fault for falling. Like, you get really used to it, and you almost forget that it can be dangerous. So maybe just evaluate before each traverse if it's a high consequence or a low consequence fall. And if it's a high consequence fall, kind of ground yourself and take a moment and realize I'm going to step carefully, even if I don't think that I need to step carefully. And I'm going to have my eye sacks out, even if I don't think I need to have it out. Or I'm going to put my spikes on, even though that means I have to stop and sit down for a second. Because at least the stupid falls I had, it was just laziness because I didn't want to stop and take out my spikes or take out my eye sacks. And
that's what I was going to ask, is the times that you fell, were you always without your micro spikes?
Yeah, it was just... And the stupid thing is, I mean, there were probably 50 traverses that I would do without spikes because I didn't want to take them out, and it was fine. And then 3 that I did, and I fell. Yeah. So it's... If you're even a little bit uncomfortable, or honestly, even if you are comfortable, just evaluating the high and low consequence falls, and don't be lazy.
Yeah. I know somebody listening to this that hasn't done that style hiking is probably thinking like, yeah, put your spikes on every time. But
yes.
Like the thru-hiker mentality is like you lose so much momentum every time you dig into your pack, sit down, put it on, and then take it off again once you hit like a rocky stretch. Like it gets frustrating. So thru-hikers understand, but
it's the same thing when you're on like a long road trip and you're working at making sure that your ETA and the time that the GPS says you're going to get there like stay the same or goes down, and then you have to stop for gas, or someone in the car is like, I need to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
And in theory it should only take 5 minutes, but when you're back on the road it's like this added 30 minutes onto my ETA.
Yeah. I started keeping my spikes in my fanny pack, which I thought was really helpful because then at least I didn't have to take my pack off. I could just put them on standing up. And then it was only a 3-minute delay instead of a 3-minute and 30-second delay, which felt significant.
Yeah. What fanny pack did you use that was big enough for your spikes?
Oh, huge endorsement. I used the Chicken Tramper Ultralight Gear fanny pack, the 2.5 liter one. It was massive, and I loved it because I could fit all of my snacks for the day, which definitely helped towards the not 3 meals a day mentality. I could portion out, I need to eat all of this today, and then it's right in front of me, so I would do it. And then it could also hold my spikes and my spork and all my odds and ends. A full pound pack of Skittles fit in there with all my other stuff. It was great.
So you had the Skittles powder and a bag of Skittles as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I ate too many Skittles.
What are your top 5 snacks?
It's a brave question because right now they all make me want to throw up. But on the trail, fruit gushers, string cheese, beef jerky, ramen.
You're snacking on ramen?
I'm snacking on ramen.
Just the dry noodles?
Carried both a stove and pot and a cold soak jar because I loved cold soaking ramen. Never got tired of it. I'd ramen every single day for lunch, cold in my Talenti jar. It was great.
What kind of pack did you carry that fit all this stuff?
I carried the Symbiosis Gear Aspen, which I don't think it's super popular.
No, I've
never heard of Symbiosis Gear.
I could talk for hours about this pack. It was great. It was started fairly recently by a woman who lives in Denver, and it's designed for women. So
the Aspen ultralight backpack for people with boobs.
Yes.
It's literally what it says on the website.
Tragically, I am lacking in the boob department, but
I think let you buy one anyway.
I bought one anyway. It's great for anyone with a more narrow frame or narrow shoulders. The specific things I liked about it were that the sternum strap, the adjustment range was from like my bottom of my neck down to my belly button. So you could kind of pick wherever that sternum strap went. And then the straps connected closer back behind your neck. So I didn't have any rotator cuff issues. It was water resistant. I would say waterproof unless it's really raining, and then nothing's waterproof. Fit all of my like stupid shit that I brought with me.
I like that I said I've never heard of this, and then you Google the pack, and the Trek review is the number 3 on the Google results.
It's a newer company. I think she started it in March.
Okay.
It was a big jump. I had a pack that I loved. I had a Light AF, and it was great. Absolutely loved it. And then 2 days before, actually at Trail Days in Silver City, I was talking to this woman who runs this company, and I was telling her that my pack sometimes gave me back pain if I had enough food in the pack. And she's like, well, you realize you're going to have really long food carries when you're on the CDT. And I was like, yeah, I think I'll just deal with the back pain. And she's like, or try this pack. And it was great.
And that alleviated the back pain entirely?
It alleviated it entirely.
Wow.
It was really great.
Yeah.
Question, shocking that it's not on the website, but how many liters is it? Doesn't say it in the description anywhere.
30, it's like a not normal number. I want to say it's like a 37 liter pack. Between 35 and 40.
According to the Trek reviews, 38 liters.
38.
Yeah.
You got to go from the Aspen tab on the navigation bar rather than through the shop to get the actual
One
dimensions.
size fits many. Best for women 5'2" to 5'10", with a bust size A to triple D, but can be worn outside of that range.
I think the benefit is that sternum strap, because I don't know if you've ever had like a sternum strap cutting right across. It's just kind of painful. So it was nice to... You can put it at an angle too, which is really nice. I don't know. I loved it.
Okay, so take us north now from, you took the non-Creede cutoff, you stayed on the CDT. Take us through the next stretch.
It was Cochetopa Valley. Oh, it's awful. So not only was I in a bad mood leaving the San Juans, but that is also where I gave myself the injury that was going to kind of plague me for the rest of the trail. I was headed over Marshall Pass towards Monarch Pass towards Salida, and I had service, so obviously I was just on my phone. I think I was actively on TikTok, just looking at my phone, scrolling, whatever, trying to catch up with friends and family, and I kicked a rock really hard, hard enough that I was like, just had to sit down for a second. I was like, that's so stupid. I was looking at my phone. I didn't think much of it, and I kept going, and it just didn't, my foot didn't feel right, and I was stressed about that, and I just got to Salida in kind of a bad mood because I was like, something's wrong with my foot, but I'm not even really willing to process that yet. I'll deal with that later. Most of my family took the Creede cutoff, and so then it was kind of this game of trying to reel them in, hike fast enough that I kind of caught them one by one as we headed north. So one of my very good friends, bus driver, had waited for me in Salida, which was really wonderful. That meant so much to me because I had kind of been worried I wouldn't see anyone again if I didn't take the Creede cutoff. But the only negative was that I definitely needed a day to deal with my foot. And she had taken, I think, a 000 to let me catch up. So she was ready to go, and I didn't want to lose her. So I just left with her, even though my foot was feeling a little bit weird. I don't regret it. I hiked all the way to Canada with her. She's going to be one of my best friends forever. But definitely the foot just kept getting worse and worse. And it's that really traditional top of foot pain that made me think I had broken it. Anyone, I think, who has gotten a stress fracture in their foot knows that it typically manifests in the top of the foot, and there aren't many other reasons that you'll feel pain in the top of your foot. So as I'm hiking, I'm just blocking that out completely, and I'm thinking, like, nope, can't be a stress fracture because that's the worst case scenario. I'm just going to keep going. My friend who was on the shuttle with me, Will, who had come to Albuquerque with me, he had just gotten off trail because he had a stress fracture in his foot, and it was on my mind, and I was so stressed about it, and it just kept getting worse. And then in Breckenridge, my parents had come to visit me. It was great to see them, and I think it was my dad who was like, if your foot's broken, it's broken whether or not you go get an x-ray. Like, even if you don't know it's broken, it's broken. So let's just go get an x-ray and let's figure it out, and you'll either get peace of mind or honestly hike on your broken foot as much as you want, but just know that it's broken. So I went and I got an x-ray, and it wasn't broken, which was great. Cried a little bit to the doctor at the x-ray place in Breckenridge, and he told me I was good to keep going as long as I could manage the pain, which I feel like thru-hikers, that's kind of the whole MO. And so I decided it was
So what was the official diagnosis?
Mystery.
Okay.
I'm guessing I had a midfoot sprain. The two things I was really concerned about was stress fracture in the bones or an issue with my Liz Frank joint. I'm not a doctor.
What's a Liz Frank joint?
Liz Frank, Lisfranc. I think it's a...
Oh, this isn't like a first name, last name.
Right.
I'm thinking like Lisa Frank.
Lisa Franklin joint. No, my Elizabeth Franklin was fine, but I think it's like a joint that absolutely can't heal through rest, and it would have needed surgery. And I don't know. I'm no doctor, but my sister had said, you need to watch your Liz Frank. And I said, okay. So I was able to keep going, but it was really hard to just have this thing that indefinitely was going to be painful. And I really struggled with that through the rest of Colorado into the basin, where every step was really painful. Like it was just really bad. And I don't know why I kept going, but I didn't feel like quitting was an option, and I didn't want to quit. And I would just think that at some point I was either going to wake up and it was going to get a lot worse and I'd go home, or it would get better and I'd keep going. It was right on the edge of, I feel fine pushing this. But that kind of took put a damper on a lot of the next 1,000 miles of the trail.
Jesus.
Sort of all the way through to Wyoming. In Grand Lake, I ended up staying with some family friends in Granby, and I just remember they were lovely. So, okay, tangent. I'll go on a tangent. So it was my grandparents' friends, Hal and B. Simmons, where Hal Simmons was the 9th person to ever hike the PCT.
Wow. What year?
1976, maybe?
Yeah.
This is your grandparent?
It's my grandparents' friend.
Cool.
So my grandparents lived in Granby for many years, and so I'm close with Hal and B. And it was really fun to stay with them. The people that I was hiking with had both hiked the PCT, and so he got out all of his old gear, and he showed us what he hiked the trail in, which was jorts and an external frame backpack. And he got it. He's a thru-hiker. So I just remember kind of crying to him about my foot, and he was telling me that it would all work out, and it made me feel a lot better. And it was hard. It was really hard to leave Granby. I think the 2 points of the trail that I thought about quitting were Granby and then in the Wind River Range. And in Granby, it was just because I was thinking I could stay here. I could stay in this bed with these people that I love and just never hike again. But they got me back out, and it was really wonderful.
Was it tough to hike out of there? Getting that like home vortex feeling? I know
Yes.
It can be challenging.
Yeah. The area just north of Grand Lake is a burn zone. And I just have this vivid memory of hiking through the burn zone, sobbing. I love hiking while crying. I think it's a stress relief.
It's really great.
It's really great.
Yeah, it's really good.
But this couple had been hiking south into Grand Lake just for a day, and they stopped to ask me if the burn zone was going to go all the way up to Grand Lake, which yes, it does. And they were like, "Oh, excuse me, does the burn zone?" Oh, like, "Oh, are you okay?" I was like, "The burn zone does go all the way to Grand Lake." But that was really hard.
Are you posting photos of yourself crying on social media?
Zach.
No. I don't.
This is a callback.
I do. I record myself when I cry when I hike because
He's setting you up. Don't play into it.
I'll play into it. I think it makes me feel silly to record myself crying. And so if I am crying and hiking and then I start taking a video, it makes me stop crying. Because then I'm like, this is kind of weird that I'm doing this. Now I'm over it.
I love that. That's funny.
What's the setup?
No, we did a triple crown of cringy things on the last episode, and Zach's was people who take photos of themselves crying.
People that post photos of themselves crying. Yeah. But in your defense, a lot of the things that were cringy are things that I also do. So
Yeah.
we're all guilty of
Exist.
this. Yeah, exactly.
I had one in the San Juans where I was crying, and then I wanted to stop crying, so I decided to record myself. And you don't see yourself in a mirror at all when you're thru hiking, which I was kind of I'm very vain, so I was unaccustomed to that. And while I was taking the video, I realized that I had a massive pimple on my chin. And so I thought the video was going to make me stop crying. And then I look at the camera and I go, oh my God, I have a pimple on my chin.
That's one of the funnest things about hiking. I've had moments on the AT where I called my best friend sobbing, and she was like, "What are you upset about?" And I was like, "I've got crow's feet, and they're so deep." She's like, "You've got dirt on your face. It's making them look deeper. Like, it's not a big deal." And like seeing your reflection
Yes.
sometimes would just make you cry more.
It's jarring. You
yeah,
get to town,
I'm
you're like,
hideous.
ooh, I don't want to look like that.
Yeah.
Or I hate when I take my hat off and then someone takes a picture of me and you could see how greasy my hair was.
Ugh. Or like my face will get really puffy in the morning if it's very cold out. And I was showing Garrett, I'm editing my Ozark Highlands Trail videos still, and I was showing Garrett one of the clips of it because it's just, my face is round, like it is entirely like puffed up. And he just like yelped. He was like, "Oh my God." And like the entire time I'm like, okay, we get it. Like my face is puffy. That was funny. But like watch this part. It's also funny. He's like, "I just can't stop." He's like, "That doesn't even look like you." Like he could not drop it. And I was like, I understand. It's jarring.
No one knows.
But that is my face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun trail stuff.
Oh, crazy.
So the foot pain is for the rest of the hike?
It was absolutely healed in Yellowstone, just through force of nature. I have no explanation for this. So it ended up getting so swollen that I got drop foot. So the swelling in my foot compressed some nerves and 2 of my toes stopped working. So as I would walk, my second and my fourth toe would just drag on the ground if I didn't have shoes on, which is really noticeable when I would do river crossings and I'd take my shoes off and then the force of the water would just push those toes back while the rest of my foot continued moving forward as normal. Very weird sensation. And so I woke up in the morning heading into Yellowstone and did a very early morning river crossing, took my shoes off because, I don't know, if it's before like 7 a.m., I'll take my shoes off because on principle, I'm not getting my shoes wet at 7 o'clock in the morning. And toes were dragging as I was accustomed to. And then we got to this place called Witch Creek, which is a geothermal river where a mile upstream it was boiling and a mile downstream it was a normal river, but right here it was like 100 degrees and perfect hot tub temperature, and we all just sat in this river for like an hour and a half as the morning moved on and it got a little bit warmer. We just spent the cold part of the morning in this river, and then when I stood up to leave it, my toes were totally normal.
It healed you?
Healed me.
Wow.
That's wild.
I'm semi-unironically now a hot spring advocate.
Yeah.
Because I have no explanation.
How could you not be after that experience?
Yeah.
I stood up, I started walking, I go, guys.
Yeah.
And I just start running around the river and my toes are pushing up against the water. This is crazy.
I'm tempted to go dip my kids into one like Achilles or something. So you just didn't have foot issues after that?
It was still painful if I moved my ankle around in a circle, like ankle circles. Or
you'd
if
like actually try to find the pain.
Yeah. Whereas before, through the Wind River Range, every single step was really painful.
You said something earlier that your toes were a dragon. Dragon toes. It could be a good alternate trail name for you.
Dragon toes.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground here on the foot pain story, but I don't want to miss more of the trail. So I think we let off in the burn zone through the Grand Lake portion.
Yes.
We're at like the Rocky Mountain National Park section, I imagine.
Yes, which I skipped. Or at least I took the cutoff. You can either do 30 miles of a loop through Rocky Mountain National Park, or you can take a 3-mile cutoff that doesn't do that. Personally, that was a loop that I had done countless times as a kid. And then in, I want to say 2020, whenever the East Troublesome Fire was, it burned a bunch of that loop. And so I just thought, I don't really want to, I have a vision in my head of what it looked like as a child, and I don't really want to see it burned. So I chose to skip it. I know the people who did it said it was fine. My one gripe with the CDT and having so many alternates to choose from, people could be very judgmental about what you chose to do. Even though I think there are very few alternates that I would say there was a correct decision on. It always felt like right after you had the choice to do an alternate for 2 or 3 days, there was this weird pissing contest going on where people were like, did you do the Rocky Mountain Loop? And it's like, no. And then it kind of makes you feel bad, even though it's totally valid. There's no reason.
It's called an alternate.
It's called an alternate.
Literally an option.
It's on far out.
Yeah. If you were going to hike the CDT again, would you do any different alternates?
I would probably do entirely different alternates just for the experience of figuring it out. I didn't personally take any that I regretted. The most notable ones I took is I did the Gila and then the Cebolla alternate, which is the brown line in New Mexico. That one actually...
What's the brown line?
So instead of staying on the red line of Far Out, which is the official CDT, all the alternates have different colors. So even though they officially do have names, like the Gila alternate, some people just call it the pink line because then on Far Out it's pink. Or the Cebolla alternate, which cuts off... I actually don't know if it cut off any distance. It was just different. It was brown.
Yeah.
So people called it the brown line. That was one, actually, that I would be interested to do the red line through. It goes through El Malpais in New Mexico with over a bunch of lava rock. But I was right after I got back on trail after my weird toenail infection. So I was just trying to do fastest, quickest, easiest route to Grants. And
somebody should do like custom CDT necklaces or bracelets with the colors of the alternates that you took.
that'd be sick.
Just to quickly display the alternate choices that you made.
There'd be so much.
Pending.
There'd be so
Good
much
way to
judgment.
judge each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
People were mean about it. Like I didn't take the Creede cutoff, and even on the red line in the San Juans, you would talk to people and they'd be like, "Can you believe this idiot's on the cutoff?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa."
I was going to ask this in the beginning, but it sounded like you had made friends, so I didn't think it was the case. But did you notice any judgmentalness having not done the AT or PCT prior?
Yes. Oh
Really?
my God.
That did show. Because I feel
Yes.
like that's usually someone's third.
Yes.
And so coming from not doing either, were you looked at as like kind of like young, naive dummy?
I think I had conversations with a lot of people who seemed to think I had never been outside before. People would give me a lot of unsolicited advice about things that also might have been helpful if I had never hiked before. I remember I was talking to one person in New Mexico, and we were walking, and I looked up and I said, "Oh, looks like rain." And he went, "You know, not all clouds mean rain."
Oh, Jesus.
It's like, oh, okay. I was vindicated. It then started raining.
Did you rub it in, I'm assuming, his face?
It was a him.
Smacking raindrops at him.
Yeah.
I was like,
but this cloud means rain, motherfucker.
crazy. That is actually a rain cloud. Or just people would give me a lot of advice. And honestly, some of it was really helpful because even though I think the CDT is a wonderful first of the three to do, no regrets. I think more people should do it as the first one if that's the one they're passionate about. It is different between the CT and the CDT being gone 5 months instead of 1 month, and just I think the mental game was a lot different. So I had a lot of friends that would give me advice that was genuinely helpful of like, hey, I know your longest backpacking trip is 28 days. You probably have questions about what it's going to feel like to be 4 months into this. And I did. And so it was nice to talk to people who did have more experience, but there were definitely people, especially people who were doing this leg as their Triple Crown, which incredibly impressive. But some of the advice did sound like I had spent my entire life in a building and had
a little condescending.
A little bit condescending.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear more of the douchey advice. Like the wholesome advice, fine, great, nice. But what's more of the cloud type stuff?
There was someone where I was cooking dinner next to them, and they watched me as I pulled my pot out and took my fuel can out of my stove and then set everything up and made dinner. And as I was packing up, he kind of nudges me like conspiratorially, and he's like, "Hey, you know, you can put your fuel can in your pot." It's like, oh, yeah, I did. Like, that's what I've been doing. Or I had someone in Silver City, not a hiker, but a person who lived in the town, a local, asked if I was going to go the whole way. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, you can't really say that. You've never done it before.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like, oh, you asked me if I plan to go the whole way.
So was no the only acceptable answer?
Yeah. I was like, well, obviously not until I've done the AT and the PCT, obviously. But
yeah. That's funny.
Wow, I love these. Any other notable highlights of douchery?
I will say, so I got really, really lucky. I think only about 15 women NOBO finished the trail this year, and I was hiking with 7 of them.
Yeah, you were in like a girl squad when we saw you.
We kind of formed a little girl group. It was wonderful. But as soon as we became visibly only women, the amount of unsolicited advice we'd get from locals went up tenfold.
Yeah.
And we would be deep into Montana. It became a running joke in the tramley where people would come up to us in bars and tell us, hey, ladies. Well, they would always say girls. Hey, girls. Just north of here, it's grizzly territory. And I hope you have your bear spray. And every time we were like, oh, thank you so much. That's wonderful advice. It has been grizzly territory for 600 miles. I hope they know that they live in grizzly territory. Someone came up to us in Anaconda, Montana. Like, oh, yeah, we know. It's been grizzly territory. We also, our bear spray visibly right on our packs.
Is there any part of you that just wants to start fucking with them at that point where they're like, hey, just so you know, it's about to be grizzly territory? And you're like, cool, what are those?
We did a little bit. I remember I was at this bar, I think it was in Anaconda, and one of my friends, she was so funny. She just looks at the guy and completely deadpans, oh, are those different from black bears? And he honestly didn't have an answer. I don't think he knew what he was talking about, but it was just funny.
Yeah, they're brown.
It was like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, thank you. Oh, do you know where to buy a bear spray? It was just funny. People would ask us if we'd come all the way from Mexico, and we'd say yes. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, they must have just stumbled here accidentally. You need bear spray. We have bear spray.
Interesting.
You mentioned the mental part being harder because it's just so much longer. Is that something you were anticipating?
Yes.
Did you prepare for that at all?
I had no idea how to prepare because I had no idea how I would react to it. It was easier than I was worried it would be because honestly, at the end of the Colorado Trail, I was kind of ready to go home and ready to see my friends and family and sleep in a bed. So I was worried that I would hit a month and then it would just be all downhill from there. And it wasn't. It was up and down. The first month was the slowest month on the trail by far. And then at the end of the first month, I remember telling my friend, hey, this is now the longest I've ever hiked. And she said, it's going to speed up. And I thought, okay, no, it won't. And then the next 4 months were a blur. So it sped up absolutely. And I got lucky. I had a really great group of friends that were around for the most part for the whole thing. So I never really got lonely. I definitely got bored, but when you get to dinner with friends, it's not boring anymore. And people had warned me the CDT was going to be isolating and lonely, and that was not my experience. And so the mental game was great. I think I had people to support me through the hard moments, and we're bonded forever in that.
Where are we on trail now? Do we talk about northern Colorado? Do you want to jump into Wyoming? You tell me.
I'll jump into Wyoming. Northern Colorado is you're through the hardest bits. And Colorado is so long that at that point you're just excited to get to Wyoming. So I think I was super excited to get to Grand Lake because of all the memories, and I'd spent so much time with family on the trail in that area. So I was stoked about that. But honestly, Grand Lake to Wyoming is pretty just head down. It's not hard hiking. It's beautiful. It's kind of surprisingly underratedly beautiful, but it's not challenging. And then the next big thing is the basin, which is where I saw you.
Yes, it is.
And I was dreading the basin, much for the same reason as I didn't like New Mexico. I'm a sweaty girl who doesn't like the heat, and I don't like the desert, and I don't like having long water carries, and I don't like the sun, and I just knew the basin was going to be all of that. And my foot hurt. So I was in a pretty bad place leaving Colorado, which was going to go on to be my favorite state of the whole trail, and going into what I thought was going to be the worst section of the trail. And it was hard. It was not, I wish I could sit here and say like, oh, and it surprised me. It was great. It wasn't great, but it was fine. And it was short, and it was easy hiking, and it was okay. My tramley and I had talked in Steamboat about how we needed to be more intentional with infusing whimsy into every day.
Infusing whimsy.
We needed more whimsy. We were very whimsical through New Mexico, and then the hard hiking of Colorado kind of took it out of us, and we just get to camp and go to bed, and no one would be in a very upbeat mood throughout the day. And so getting to Steamboat, we sat down and we got Thai food, and we're like, okay, we need to be more whimsical. Bring back the whimsy. So we went to the Walmart in Rollins, which is, you and Elise actually drove us there. And we all decided to get our resupply, and then everyone had to get one item that was going to bring whimsy to the tramway through the basin. And this one guy, Skeeter, he got everyone water guns, which ended up, I think he hit it out of the park. That was probably the best get. Hamilton got everyone little princess bows that we ended up carrying on our packs for a while. I got a little propeller hat for the wind. Someone got glow in the dark, like glow stick sunglasses, because we anticipated doing a lot of night hiking to beat the heat. I think that might have been it. But it ended up being a very whimsical time. Yeah.
That's a good little nugget for somebody to hear, is like a trip to Walmart and, infusing whimsy.
Yeah. It was great. I think there are times that I would be hot and miserable, and then I would open the front camera on my phone and I had a propeller hat on. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm in a good mood now because I'm in a propeller hat.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the winds were beneath your expectations.
Yeah. So stunning. I don't mean to disparage them in any way. They're absolutely beautiful. They were just shorter than I wanted them to be, and I was in pain the whole time. So I think those are the two big gripes I had about that section. I took 6 days off in Lander, Wyoming, right before the winds to try to get my foot back in a little bit of working order. So I had lost my tramlay at that point, which ended up being wonderful because I reconnected with some other people that I had been hiking around for a really long time but never really hiking with, and then we ended up hiking through the winds together and through Yellowstone together, and it just kind of expanded the tramley. And it was like, I don't know, like I said, I'm an introvert. I feel like I spend enough time around the same people, and I'm going to start getting frustrated with them through no fault of their own. So it was nice to have a break and hike with these new people and fix my foot in Yellowstone magically.
Yeah, I guess take us through the highlights for the rest of the trail then.
I thought the Idaho-Montana border section I had never heard anything about. And then we started seeing all the SOBOs in Wyoming, and they started telling us that it was going to be harder than Colorado. And Colorado was pretty hard. And so we were all nervous and a little bit low spirits going into Idaho. Because at that point, I don't know, I think the Idaho-Montana border is mile 1,500-ish. So you're done with the hard bits.
Idaho-Montana border?
Or sorry, the Wyoming-Idaho border.
Okay. Well, it does feel like I saw you ages ago, and that was that far north. So you still have a long way left to go after that.
You saw me almost exactly at the halfway point.
Really?
Yeah.
It feels like 3/4 based on, like, my idea of a map.
I think it's 3/4 in terms of difficulty. Once you get through Colorado, that is by far the hardest state. But in terms of just sheer distance, you still have, I guess it's over halfway. You have over 1,500 miles to go.
Wow.
If you don't take the Big Sky cutoff. But it's much, much easier hiking. The basin sucks for a lot of reasons, but it's flat. It's easy. The winds are beautiful, and they're also really well-maintained trails, so it's fairly easy. Yellowstone, any national park, it's really well-maintained. And it was pretty easy all the way up until Idaho. And then you start having really steep climbs again. But it was beautiful in a way I wasn't expecting. It was a lot of treeless golden hills, which sucked when it stormed. That was the closest I've ever gotten to being hit by lightning. But I don't know. No one talks about Idaho-Montana as a section because it's bookended by the winds and then glacier. And so those get more attention. But Idaho that section was probably my second favorite of the whole trail. It was just a ecosystem I've never been in before, and I'll probably never be in again. And it was so weird. It was weird. It was weird and beautiful and hard, but it was not harder than Colorado. I think the SOBOs were a little bit fear-mongering.
Two things. One, Idaho-Montana. Great word. Two, saying that after Colorado you're 3/4 through the difficulty and it gets easier hiking after that. Is that an argument to go SOBO? Would you do it again SOBO if you had to choose the direction?
I don't think there's a clear winner. Unfortunately, I think there usually ends up being a clear best way to do it each year that you can't decide until you have already seen how the year shakes up. So, for example, you kind of have to decide that you're going NOBO and take off work and do all of that before you know how the snowpack in the San Juans is going to work out and before you know what the snow is going to look like in Glacier. And it's just kind of, you have to decide before you know how hard it's going to be. I think, and I'm definitely biased, but I think this year was a better year to go NOBO. The San Juans didn't get that much snow. Glacier got really late snow. Colorado got pretty early snow. So the SOBOs I know got caught in snow in both Glacier and Colorado. And then personally, I cannot imagine ending the trail in New Mexico.
Yeah.
That's, Glacier was so crazy. And most days in Glacier, my family and I were like, can you imagine if right now we were
New Mexico
in the boot heel?
So you mentioned almost getting hit by lightning. Tell us about that. We have a little red comment that says, fun fact, Rachel went to college with Iceman here.
Oh.
I'm assuming that he's involved in this story. She?
Yeah, he is this guy I hiked briefly with through a little bit of Idaho. And it was him and me and then another girl, Livy. And we were kind of ahead of our main group. And we had just left Lima and a storm was rolling in, and the way the Idaho area works is you're up on this ridgeline forever and there are no trees. You're not above tree line. It's not high altitude, but it's just trees don't grow there. And a storm broke out, and Iceman had a lot more experience than I did in, well, actually, I don't know if that's true. He gave off the vibe of being very experienced with like 14ers and juggling storm and weather and that sort of thing. So he was about a 1/10 of a mile ahead of me, and Livy was about a 1/10 of a mile behind me. And I was using him as my litmus test of, I'm not going to bail off and run into a valley until he bails off and runs into a valley. And he wasn't bailing. So we all kept going. And then a giant cumulonimbus broke right above our heads. And so we were getting thunder and lightning, 0 seconds in between them. It was incredibly bright, incredibly loud. And I look up and he's running. I'm like, fuck. No. Okay. So then I start running because we're thinking if we can put one little peak between us and this cloud, we're going to be okay. And I look to my right and I see this big herd of cows. I'm like, you know what? If the cows are there, we're fine. Because they probably have instincts. They're going to run if there's lightning. So I'm running. And then there's one giant clap of thunder. And it's so bright. I have to kind of blink away all the fuzzies in my eye, collect myself after this giant clap of thunder, and I look to my right and 2 of the cows are dead.
No! I almost just made a joke about that.
Turns out cows are not cows have no instincts. They just died. I'm guessing it was a ground strike. I'm guessing it hit the ground near them, and I didn't honestly give it that much time. I think I was at that point crying. And
did they make any like dying cow noise, or was it just like they're now laying down and they weren't laying down before?
No idea. They were visibly dead. They were like tongue out.
Oh my God, you were that close?
I was very, very close to these cows, like 4 legs out to the side.
Like stiff?
I was sprinting at this point. I think I registered it and I was like, okay, let's go.
I already got it.
Thanks.
So just running. We did eventually put a peak between us and the cloud, and then we bailed off down into this little valley just because I think we all needed to collect ourselves a little bit. Everyone was a little bit shaken. And I was asking Iceman and Olivia, I was like, did you guys see the cows? And they're like, no, what happened? And I was like, oh, the cows died.
Oh my God. Did the other cows react, or were they just like continuing to munch next to their crispy friends?
They were just munching. Like they didn't seem all that bothered. So I've learned don't trust cows.
No.
They don't know what they're doing.
Can't trust them.
Not at all.
Wow.
Could you imagine just watching your cow buddy die and just be like, there's some
more grass for me.
You could smell it, like the sulfur. It just smelled like electricity. Like you could just, I don't know, you could smell how close it was.
Did you see the like bolt, or did you just see flash of white?
I saw the flash of white only because I had my umbrella up, kind of because I didn't want to see it.
Isn't that bad?
Yeah, but
did Ben Franklin do? No, that was a kite.
I think it was it's adding such an imperceptible amount of height that if I'm about to get hit by lightning anyway on this ridge, I don't think the umbrella is going to...
The umbrella's got metal in it, surely.
I have heard, and don't quote me on this, that metal doesn't attract lightning. It just is conductive. So if it hit the umbrella, it would travel more through to my hand, but it wouldn't attract the lightning.
Interesting.
I could be so wrong about that, but
That's a good, at least, peace of mind to have as you're holding an umbrella.
it was nice to think that it wouldn't hurt.
Well, you were probably taller than the cow.
Yeah, definitely
So it's crazy
taller
that
than
it
the
went for the cow, not you.
But Livy said that she saw the bolt of lightning hit the ridge
Oh,
because she didn't have the umbrella. So we were then worried about the rest of our family because she said it hit behind her between where our two groups were running. But it turns out they were smarter than us, better than us in every way, shape, and form, and they had bailed down into a little copse of trees.
Are you running up the trail or are you running away from the trail?
I was running along the trail, so it went up a peak and then did almost a 90-degree turn down into a saddle, and I cut the corner and ran down through that little bowl because I didn't want to go to the top of that mountain.
Sure.
Which I'm glad I didn't because that's apparently where the lightning hit, but kind of cut that corner over to where the trail again was on that ridgeline just to try to put that second peak between me and the cloud.
According to ChatGPT, lightning generally targets the highest object in the area rather than a specific...
Ask the cow about that. That's not true.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, you're correct.
But yeah, I don't know. That was crazy. Lightning is my biggest fear while hiking.
Yeah.
So I didn't enjoy that.
We had to reschedule a podcast interview once because we got an email that was like, my wife just got struck by lightning. I'm going to have to reschedule.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, in like a nonchalant way. We were like, is she okay? You remember that?
Yeah.
It was a wild email to get.
Yeah.
The next night, we actually camped at a spot where one of the far out comments was a guy saying that he got struck by lightning there. And all of us were like, I don't want to call you a liar, but his story didn't add up. He's like, I heard a really loud noise, and then I was on the ground, and then I got up and kept going. And we're like, can you do that if you were struck by lightning?
I don't know, because I read Shattered Air, which is about people that were at the top of Half Dome in a lightning storm, and like some of them died. A lot of them were in this little cave when the lightning struck, and like some of them got struck by lightning and like had a burn mark on the like bottom of their foot where it like left, like it like went in their shoulder, left their foot, and like they were the ones like helping to give aid. Like they were like virtually fine. That's just because of the way it flew through them and like the way they were sitting and just all kinds of wild things. So who's to know?
That's crazy. I always wonder how useful lightning position is.
Yeah, I've heard recently that the squat is potentially bullshit, but there's a lot of stuff on the internet, so fact check. So anything I say fact check, it's wrong.
I've always heard if you can run, and then the lightning position is somehow you just know it's coming and you can't stop it.
Yeah. I've heard it's good to squat so you're in a better position to kiss your ass goodbye.
Do you want to be on the balls of your feet or the heel, like the balls or the, what's the other part?
Heard you're on your balls of your feet with your heels together to, in theory, give the lightning a path to go up your toes and then just out your other toes instead of going up through your heart and stuff. But as someone who's never been hit by lightning,
not an expert.
We should get a lightning expert on.
That's a good idea.
That'd be cool.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Let's find one.
Hook it up.
If you're listening to this and you're a lightning expert.
Yeah.
I'd listen to that unless the answer is scarier than what's in my head, and then I don't want to hear it.
Okay, so you survive a lightning storm. The cow does not. The cows do not. What do we have after this?
The best trail magic I got on the entire trail was in Darby, Montana, which is the town that sort of unofficially signifies the end of... Because when you're hiking the Idaho-Montana border, you're 5 to 10 times a day crossing from Idaho to Montana to Idaho to Montana. I'm sure it's kind of like the Tennessee, North Carolina on the AT. And Darby is your last town before you split off and go east into Montana, and then you don't ever go into Idaho again. And while we were in Darby, a massive storm rolled in. So we went there spent our day there, didn't plan to zero. It was
You know
totally
that
fine.
not all clouds are storm clouds.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If I had hiked the PCT, I think I would have known that.
It's okay. We won't fault you for it.
So we're in Darby, and as we're in the library getting ready to leave, storm rolls in. And we're like, oh, okay, I don't want to go back on trail just to walk 3 miles and then camp in this storm. And all the power in the town goes out, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely just, it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't scary. It was just annoying. We're like, okay, are we really about to go back out to trail right now? It's really cold. It had just started to freeze at nights again, and we just didn't want to deal with it. And so we are just kind of sitting outside the library. And earlier in the day, 2 of my friends had run into this woman who is not a hiker in the town, who just said that she felt compelled to do something nice and invited the 2 of them back to take a shower at her place. And they ended up texting her and asked if all 7 of us could stay at her house that night. And she said, yeah, absolutely. Come through. So she came, she picked us up, she brought us to her house. She then proceeded to say, I have dinner plans with my sister. I'm going to leave. You guys make yourself at home. There's a garden out back. Make yourself a salad. There's no power, so we didn't have any water, or she didn't want us opening the fridge. But she's like, eat whatever you want, whatever you can find. She slept in her camper van in her driveway so that all of us had a bed. It was so kind. And I mean, so much of trail magic comes from people who have hiked the trail before, and it's just giving back, and it's really beautiful. Something about the fact that she didn't even know what the CDT was, and she was still willing to let 7 really smelly people into her house unsupervised, and she left the house and just trusted us with her things. It just was really touching. It was so kind, and it was a moment where none of us wanted to hike, so it was great.
Yeah. That is cool.
I think that's partly something that's both bad and good about the CDT, where you don't get trail magic very often at all. So that sucks. But then when you do, it's really meaningful. And it's usually big because people don't have to split their resources over so many hikers. Like, there were a couple times that people would just come up to me and hand me cash. Like, they're...
Really?
Yeah. In also Darby, Montana, we were getting brunch the next morning, and there was a guy there with his family, and he was asking us what we were doing, and he's like, that's cool. And then he said, I paid for your breakfast, and here's $100. And we're like,
whoa.
Oh.
We gotta go to Darby.
Thank you. But also, granted, that was the first trail magic we had gotten in the past 2.5 months. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a weird experience.
Yeah.
That's cool, though.
I'm going to stop asking questions and just let you continue to narrate us further north.
Perfect.
No, I'll steer it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, what's after the trail magic of Darby?
Then you head into Montana, which is the last state. And so you're kind of, or at least I was, feeling a little emotional. I wasn't really ready for it to end. And I'd never been to Montana, so I didn't know what to expect.
That's interesting to me, because you said that you were ready for it to be over on the Colorado Trail, but you're now how many thousands of miles into the CDT, and you didn't want that to end. I
really wasn't ready. I think the Colorado Trail, it was short enough that I never totally felt distance from my real life. And then, at least in Montana, it was like I've spent the last 4 months on the trail. I don't know if I'm gonna have a job when I get off. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't. One of my roommates moved out while I was on the trail, and so it's like I'm going home to kind of an unfamiliar situation, and I like where I am.
Katie's gone. You're double dip.
Katie's gone. Double dip reigns supreme. But we were very split as a family. There were definitely some people who were super ready for it to be over, and then some people who would take any longer route just to make it last longer. I thought that was interesting. I was probably somewhere in the middle. There, my foot still really hurt. And I missed. So my boyfriend and I have been long distance for about 4 years, I guess, at this point, from Denver to Boston, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, how did you manage that? I mean, I guess it's not too different than your normal day-to-day life, considering you live in different cities.
That's what we thought. I think we went into it really overconfident. We're like, okay, you know what? We're really good at distance.
Yeah.
I just won't see you for 5 months. And then we usually see each other every month, even doing distance. And definitely by month 4, I was like, okay, this sucks.
Yeah. Is he cool with you having random guys in your hiking group?
Oh yeah, he's fine with it. I think we've talked about this a lot, where we think it's kind of a sign of, it's a red flag to both of us when people can't be friends with members of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
So I don't know, he has a lot of female friends, I have a lot of guy friends,
Yeah.
and neither of us think that's weird.
Sure.
So
That's very healthy, but it doesn't always work out that way.
yeah, I did meet some people on trail who were like, oh, I have a girlfriend, so I was like, oh, okay, I promise I'm not interested in you.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially on the CDT, it was such a male-dominated trail that it would almost have been impossible to not hike with guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of the great friends I made were guys on the trail, so I think it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was ready to finish the trail to be able to see him, and I was ready to finish the trail to go to a doctor to figure out my foot.
Yeah.
But other than that, I could have just lived there
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah. So where do we go now? Are we at Glacier? Do you want to go to the northern terminus? You tell me.
Before then, because I was almost disappointed by Montana until I wasn't. Because the only thing I had heard about Montana was 1, the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and then 2, Glacier. And both of those were incredible, but they were also the last 2 weeks of the trail. And the first 2 weeks in Montana were near Helena, Anaconda and Helena and Lincoln. And it kind of sucked. It was fine because it was easy hiking, but you think Montana and you think Glacier, and going through these areas, it was a lot of dirt road walks, and the water had dried up for the year, so we had these really, really long water carries, and it was very hot, and it was super smoky. We got so lucky with fire this year on the trail, but California did not get lucky with fire, and that smoke blew to us. So I think we had a very smoky year, but no fire closures. Although the joke in the tramway was we kept dodging these fire closures by 1 day. I think there actually were probably a normal amount of fire closures, but we missed them all. We were 1 day ahead of them. So the joke was that I really didn't want anyone else to have the same experience I had. So I was lighting the fires behind me. Because there was a fire in the winds that we skirted by a day. And I was like, yeah, I lit the fuse. But it was kind of brutal up until Lincoln. And then you get into the Bob Marshall Wilderness, which we had been told was going to be really remote. And we learned the lesson that if a lot of locals know enough about an area to tell you that it's going to be remote, it is not going to be remote at all. We saw so many people in the Bob. All of us, for various reasons, had missed Hike Naked Day back in June. Partly because it was just so snowy still then. And so none of us, we were all too cold to be naked. And so we had decided to do a makeup Hike Naked Day in the Bob. And then we get there and we're like, okay, we're seeing a lot of people. But we persisted. We did it anyway.
How do you manage that? Do you dip off into a section of trees when you see someone coming, or what?
We had one person who didn't want to do it. And so she was a little bit ahead, and we told her to just yell back if she saw anyone.
Yeah.
And we didn't. We got lucky. It was like a 2-hour stretch where we didn't see anyone.
Did you have a code word?
I think the code word was, guys, put your clothes on.
Fair.
No, we got lucky, unless people saw us coming and then hid. But the Bob was beautiful, but I'm glad we went Nobo, because the Bob compared to Glacier sucked. But Helena to Lincoln compared to the Bob was incredible. So we kind of had this ramp up of dirt roads through southern Montana into, oh, the Bob is beautiful, into, oh my God, this is what the hype is about in Glacier. And that was wonderful. I had never been to Glacier. It was absolutely everything it lived up to be. The trail it's the only section of the trail that I think rivaled the San Juans, where it was not quite as beautiful, but it was so easy because the trails were really well maintained, and you had your trail legs, and all the snow was gone, and it was just wonderful. It was just beautiful, easy hiking, and you're right at the end, so you're all feeling sentimental, and every dinner you all cry a little bit, and you're sharing stories and reminiscing on the trail. And
Did you see any grizzlies?
Yes. I ended up seeing 5 grizzlies and 3 black bears.
Wow.
for the trail.
Any somewhat close encounters?
No, none. I left the trail a lot less scared of grizzlies than I had been going into it. I went into it terrified.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. There's a pass near Wyoming called Gunsight Pass, near Wyoming. It's in Wyoming, called Gunsight Pass. And that's kind of the unofficial mark of when grizzly territory starts. And the morning after Gunsight Pass, I saw my first grizzly. And I was like, oh my God, that's terrifying. I don't know. I didn't sleep for the first 5 nights in grizzly territory. And then the more grizzlies I encountered and the more they behaved exactly as expected, kind of the more I was able to let it go. You'd see a lot of tracks. You would see a lot of the scratches in the trees. And you realized, like, they genuinely don't want you. And it got to the point where I started feeling lucky if I saw one, because it was cool and they never gave me any problems.
Yeah.
Are they all far away when you're seeing them?
2 of them were pretty close, and then I guess all 5 of the grizzlies were pretty close. The closest was getting out of my tent one morning, and there were 3 grizzlies.
No.
Right there.
3 of them.
3 of them.
Like right there, as in how far?
50 feet maybe away. I'm bad with distances.
These, like,
25 yards. I'll say 1 swimming pool.
That's smaller than I would think based on those numbers.
I'm guessing it was or was it 4? I don't remember now. But I think it was a mom. At the time, I thought it was like a mom, dad, and a kid. And then in retrospect, I think it was a mom and 2 kids, but 1 kid was older.
That's also very scary.
Yeah, I don't want to be around mom and the cubs.
What part of this is comforting and, like, exactly as expected?
They looked at me, and then they were so unfazed and then just kept walking away. Like, they didn't care about me at all. So I think that was kind of nice. I realized that, like, unless you get in between the mom and her cub, I don't know. I just didn't have any bad encounters.
When you get out of your tent and you see them, are you starting to make noise, or are you in shock, like, I'm not saying shit?
I think I was in shock. I don't think I said anything. I got my bear spray out.
Did you get your camera?
I wish. My dad kept asking for photos. I was like, I'm reaching for the bear spray, not the camera.
Yeah.
But they saw me immediately. Like, and they just were so unbothered by my presence.
Yeah.
That's comforting.
Yeah.
Okay, take us through the emotions of getting to the terminus.
It was crazy. It's like, you see the pictures of people finishing, and so I had this idea of what it looked like, but you only see the same angle that everyone takes their photos from. And so you walk up, and it's like, oh, the monument's smaller than I thought it was going to be, and it's hard to conceptualize it as this full 360 panoramic real-life view. And so it was so surreal. We ended up as a tramily walking the last 1 mile together singing "Oh Canada."
Good for you for knowing the words.
We didn't. We made them up. We had 1 member in our group from Canada, and the rest of us would just kind of make noises while she sang. But it was just fun to all get there together and see what it looked like. And it was everything I expected it to be, and absolutely nothing like I expected it to be. It was so surreal. It was like this incredibly happy moment where you've accomplished the thing that you've been trying to accomplish for the last 1.5 years, and then it's also so sad because then it's over. And my family met me at the terminus, which was really wonderful. Or they didn't come to the terminus, but they came to Waterton, which was like a 4-mile hike past the terminus, which was great. It was wonderful to see them, but it was also bittersweet because then I knew I'd be spending time with my family, and I was going to have to say goodbye to my tramily, and it was just weird to know that it was over. And we stayed there for probably 2 hours just taking pictures and doing a shoey and jumping in the lake.
You did a shoey?
Oh, yeah, I did a shoey.
Is it gross?
There were chunks.
Yeah.
It's just my 2 friends and I had been talking about it since New Mexico, that we really wanted to do a shoey. So.
Yeah. Are you drinking a full beer, or is it just like enough to coat the bottom of it?
We had mailed ourselves Prosecco.
Okay.
So, because none of us are really beer drinkers. Or, that's not true. They were all beer drinkers. I'm not a huge beer person. So, I wanted Prosecco. And we just poured enough in to kind of say we did it, because then I actually wanted to drink the Prosecco and enjoy it and not have it be shoe flavored.
Fair.
Another patent pending, do a Prosecco with a shoe flavored.
Yeah, that'll
Spin.
sell well.
Chunks included.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's with the
Pulp.
pulp. Yeah.
With pulp.
Awesome. Well, there's other articles that I wanted to talk about, but the CDT journey was so enticing that I think we got stuck in that. So I think we're going to tackle a few of these subjects in the Patreon episode. Before we do, we have a Kumo question. After your rave review of Gossamer Gear's shelters.
I will say, their umbrella, I owe my life to the Gossamer Gear umbrella.
Yeah, they make a good umbrella. Use code SnuggleBug for 20% off your shelters at gossamergear.com.
Ooh, what is your favorite book and why?
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I have like 3 answers to this, and I'm trying to...
Give all 3.
Okay. So I think it ranges from my favorite childhood book up to my favorite book now, where my favorite book as a kid was Gail Carson Levine's The Two Princesses of Bamar. It is definitely a children's book. It's kind of like a fairy tale retelling type situation, but I'd recommend it to anyone who has a sister, because it's about 2 sisters, and I think it's really emotional, and it made me think about my sister when I was reading it, and I don't know, it's a good book. Easy read, definitely for children. And then my favorite book through high school was this book called The Art of Racing in the Rain. I think they made a movie about it recently that I refused to watch because I like the book too much. There's no way to describe the book without making it sound kind of silly, but it's from the perspective of a dog, and it's the life of the dog's owner, but through the eyes of the dog. So he doesn't really understand all the things that are going on, and the owner goes through some very serious things where he gets married and then has a child, and his wife ended up dying very young, and it's all told from the dog's perspective, who doesn't really understand a lot of that stuff. So I thought that was a very good book. And then my current favorite book is probably We Need to Talk About Kevin. And that is a book from the perspective of a mother after her son has committed a school shooting.
Oh, shit.
And she is going back through...
Fiction or nonfiction? Fiction,
thankfully. But she's going back through her life and her son's life and trying to figure out if it was nurture or nature, and if it was her fault that he turned out that way, or if he was just born like that. And I think it's an interesting read, in like a spooky way. I don't know. It's always a tense subject, but
yeah.
Sure.
Well, Katie, you are awesome. Let people know, obviously, you've got a hefty author profile on the Trek. Where should they go for social media and anything else that you want people to know?
Yeah, just in terms of social media, I kind of just have Instagram, Katie Trail, but spelled K80.trail. And then other than that, I'm kind of social media less. And yeah, I guess all I would say is if you are interested in hiking the CDT more than the other 2, but feel like you can't do it first because you need the experience of the other 2, that's not true. That's bullshit. You can do it first. Lots of people on the trail this year, this was their first long trail. And most of them made it to the end.
What's the next hike for you?
I kind of want to do the long trail next year as like an in-betweener. And then unfortunately, I think I do want to do the AT now. I say unfortunately because I think it's going to suck, but I really want to do it.
AT's great. You'll love the AT. Awesome. So we're going to do your article about solo travel, doing it safely as a solo female. I also want to do something. You mentioned that you had some subjects that were burning, like future articles for you.
Yes. Let me pull up my notes app. I think a lot of it was like advice I have for people that are going to be hiking the CDT. The biggest challenges in each state. The best side quests of each state. Oh, okay. in New Mexico. This is
Wait, are we starting?
Oh, never mind.
Oh yeah, we're gonna save that. We're gonna save the side
yeah.
stories.
Don't say
Okay,
it yet.
okay.
You have
We're
to
gonna-
buy this.
Yeah, we're gonna jump over to the patreon.com/backpacker radio. To the Trek propaganda portion of today's show, a couple articles. I'll go through the first one quickly. This is by Kelly Floro. The title is, "Will it even be possible to thru-hike the AT in 2025?" Obviously, this is a huge subject. I'm not really even going to go into depth on this because this is going to just change so much by the time that this comes out. We'll have a lot more intel on the state of the trail. Mostly what I want to flag here is that we will continually be covering this subject. I know this is top of mind for a lot of people. So check out Kelly's article if you want the status of this as of like mid-October, but we'll be doing many more pieces on this as time goes. The other one I want to touch on is another piece by Kelly, and she did Why I'm Never Hiking in a Dress Again, which is somewhat controversial because I know plenty of people that love hiking in a dress. She cites some of the reasons, and I want you to go check out the piece, is that she's accidentally revealed herself in inopportune moments, mosquitoes biting her ass and being subject to poison ivy. Not to tip the article, but she's a big fan of hiking in long pants. And she also says that hiking in a dress is less versatile. So if you want the full breakdown on why Kelly says she's never hiking in a dress again, head to the link in the show notes.
That article gave me pause because I really want to hike the AT in a dress.
Yeah?
And then I read that and I was like, these are actually some really good points. Maybe I shouldn't.
I was dealing with a lot of chafing on the AT, so I was willing to try wild things, and I did a section of the trail, a very short section, in a hiking kilt, and I got it at an outfitter in Harper's Ferry, and I think they only had a small available, which I'm not a small, so it was not only tight on me, but it was also very short.
Okay.
It was like I was wearing like a pencil skirt or something like that.
A slutty little
Yeah.
AT.
Slutty Zach out on the AT.
And there were times where I was about to end up on a list because like it's tough to conceal. So I know tons of people that again love hiking in a dress. I know some people that also like hiking in a kilt, but I can say that at least that kilt was not for me. I can definitely empathize with Kelly on this one. Okay, question of the day. This is yours.
Yes. Do you know about Frito feet? This is
Yes.
something I keep seeing about on the internet, which pertains to your dog's feet smelling like Fritos. And what the internet says, at least like the context of it that I've gathered, is people like talking about how like dog feet in theory are gross, but how they just like cannot help but smell their cute dog's Frito feet.
Yeah.
And in my mind, like I was allergic to dogs for most of my life. I outgrew the allergy and got Harper, and like she has licked the inside of my mouth, and I've been like, that's cute, whereas previously I would have thrown up knowing where that tongue has been. But the one thing that I have not gotten into, like, my dog is so cute it does not fault world with, is the idea of taking her feet that have been standing in her pee and stepping on poop and putting them up to my nose and just sniffing them to smell a smell that might smell like Fritos.
It's very worth it.
You said yes real quick.
Yeah. I didn't even know this was like a phenomenon. All I knew that like Jenna would randomly just grab Sierra's paw and like sniff her feet.
Yeah, people do that.
And she'd be like, corn chip feet. Like she just does that.
Is it like a good smell?
Yeah, it smells just like corn chips, like Fritos. So if you're prepared for corn chips to smell good out of your dog's paw, then yes. But it's just an interesting phenomenon that you wouldn't expect, to Chauncey's point, a dog's paw that's been like rummaging through shit to smell like anything other than like dirt and shit. But yeah, it's corn chips. It's
What
Fritos.
makes this universal? What about?
No idea. No fucking clue. But here's an update that I think is very fitting, is in between submitting this as a question of the day and us reading it right now, Harper sleeps in bed every night. Like, sandwiched between me and Garrett. We don't cuddle, we cuddle Harper.
Yeah.
And like there was a night within the past week where I was asleep and she was asleep next to me. We're head to head, our noses touch. It's real cute. We hug, we hold hands sometimes. But I had rolled over and I had my back to her and I rolled over. So now we're nose to nose, cutesy. And I had gotten a strong whiff of what smelled like corn chips. And I was like, what's that smell? And I opened my eyes and her foot was in my face and I was like, ugh. And then I was like, oh my God, it does smell like that.
Yeah.
I never would have picked up her paw and done it, but now I'm like curious enough where maybe like after the groomer, I might do
it's
it
weird
again.
that that's where you draw your line, because her licking the inside of your mouth is.
I mean, I don't
just
let her do
objectively-
that, but
probably
like
do a little
I'll
bit.
put my face up to her face and she'll lick my nose like real gently, and I'll be like, that's really cute.
That's letting her lick your mouth.
But sometimes if I say that's real cute and she goes for a second one, like she'll get it in there while I'm talking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not so cute. But yeah, no, fine line that I previously never would have crossed. And
Yeah.
I did get a small middle of the night whiff of what seemingly might have been Fritos.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just dogs? Or do you think cat paws also?
I don't know.
don't think it's
if
cat
you get
claws.
close enough to cat claws, they're gonna scratch
Yeah.
your eyeballs out. I would never.
That's fair.
It's very dangerous.
I've had cats growing up. I've never smelled Frito scent, but that one night I got a strong whiff of Fritos, and apparently the whole internet knows about Frito feet.
Yeah.
So
I suspect that cat claws smell like murder.
yeah,
I feel out of the loop. I feel like
um,
I've missed out on Frito feet.
Yeah. Well, there's still plenty of time.
yeah. If you can find a dog,
Gotta smell their feet.
smell their feet. If you're listening to this and you have a dog, smell their feet. Let us know.
Yeah.
Podcast@thetrek.co.
Yeah. Before we get to Triple Crown, I have a depressing thing of the week.
Is this where you broke the law?
No. I
So
forgot
you
that I'd already
two things.
done that one before.
Which was the breaking?
Because you correctly called out what my illegal thing was, so I don't need to do that again.
But you did do it again.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't need to make a segment of it again.
Okay. Did you get caught?
No, I don't ever
Okay.
get caught.
You were just gonna
When I
make.
get pulled over, I get warnings. You know that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so depressing thing of the week.
Yeah, was
Parentheses Zach/darkness is the
Hello,
note.
darkness, my old. So I've been an outspoken proponent of how much I hate daylight savings. It's the
Yes.
worst. Like, it's so depressing when you come out of work and it's dark outside. Today was the first time I felt in my life where I was looking forward to it.
Really?
Because we get up early with the kids. Ollie was up at 5 today. He's a little sick. And being awake for 2 hours when it's still dark outside, that's a bummer too. And now as a not voluntary early riser, I kind of want that extra hour of daylight in the morning.
I think that's like the threshold you've crossed where you are officially the adultier adult.
Yeah, no, it's if you've listened to this podcast, you're watching me become old and curmudgeon-y in real time. And
Yeah.
I don't like it. It is depressing. That's why it's the depressing thing of the week. But it is the way that I felt this morning, and it was strange because I've always felt the exact opposite.
The idea of ending work at 5 and it's dark
Dark
already.
out. Yeah, I hate that.
No, if you would have given me the choice even
Brutal.
like 3 years ago, I would prefer we spring forward in the fall just to have the extra hour of daylight at the end of the day. And it can
Yeah.
stay dark till, I don't care, 11 a.m. doesn't matter to me. But no, now I want that light in the morning because I'd rather it be dark later because I'm getting ready to face the next day. I'm getting ready to sleep. Like, I'm in bed at 9 o'clock most days, 9:30 probably.
Fair enough.
Yeah, now I want light and caffeine in the morning.
Okay, well, that is depressing.
Yeah, good.
I hate that.
I'm sorry about that.
You guys will have, maybe you will. If you choose to have kids, you maybe will resonate with that at some point. Triple Crown. This is me. I'll just say what it is and then we can dive into the inspiration. But this is the Triple Crown of places where a long trail should exist but doesn't currently. I'm going to start here based on the one that inspired me to do this was I love California. I've said that a lot on this podcast, and specifically at the coast. And I want there to be a California coast hike. And in the process of researching something today, not even related to this, I learned that there is a California coastal trail. This
Yay.
exists.
Isn't there a Pacific Coast Trail?
The Pacific Coast Highway.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah. I did not look too deep into the trail. It can't be that well known or established, or I'm assuming that there's parts where the trail is road or you're off the coast or whatever it might be, because if it was more established, this would be very popular. But there is a California coastal trail, so it'll be my mission, at least between now and the next episode, to learn more about this because I'm intrigued.
I feel like it's the perfect amount of popularity. Go set the FKT.
I probably will
There you
be
go.
gone for a little bit of time, but yeah, California coast is the best. So I don't know if this qualifies as my first draft pick for it, but I'm gonna stick with it, even though it kind of exists, and then I'll get back to you guys as to to what extent this actually exists.
Okay. My first one, I'm going to do Denver to Moab. I think that's a great
Denver to
stretch
what?
of highway. I'm not biting. It's a great stretch of highway.
You've gotten better. It used to be Moab.
It was never Moab. It was never
Polly,
Moab.
run the tape.
It was never Moab.
Denver to where?
Shut up. Denver to that place that I like in the West. And it is a nice highway ride.
It's funny to me because it is so phonetic. Like it.
Moab. It's an M-O-A-B. Moab. Moab. That's what it is. Stop laughing at me. I want there to be a trail from there to there. Go away. Next.
What's the series of muscles in your core?
Hate.
All right, Katie, do you have any?
Yeah, I know there is the Ozark Highlands Trail, but I think an east to west or west to east, whatever, Missouri Trail through all of southern Missouri. I think it gets a reputation as kind of a flyover or drive-through state, but that's just because where the highway is, it's really flat and kind of boring. But like maybe the border of Missouri and Arkansas from spanning across the whole state through the Ozarks.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
That's a good one. Triple Crown rules, it's a snake draft, so technically you get 2 picks right now.
Oh, excellent. Perfect. Okay, then I'm going to take Alaska. There might be something in Alaska that I don't know about, but there are so many parks up there and so many beautiful areas, and it's so big. And I have never heard of a thru-hike in Alaska.
Yeah. They exist, but I think they're more route.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spirit of this, yeah, that qualifies.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want I don't want a route find. I want a trail.
I
want,
agree.
Like, class 1 on far out, follow the red line.
Yeah. Because I think in theory if we're including routes, there's already a trail for everything.
Yeah.
Like somebody has done everything. We've interviewed a lot of people who've done some really wild shit, and yeah.
I want is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is my turn. I want some more north-south options. Like a Mexico to Canada, like another one. Give us some more. Why stop at 3? But maybe
Quadruple
one.
Crown?
Well, no, it could be one that follows, like if I'm looking at a map somewhere where the line between states is like a little more crooked than straight. Like start at the New Orleans tip of Louisiana, have like terminus in New Orleans, go to Bourbon Street, or avoid it because it smells like piss, and then follow the state line that separates the states on the east from the west, and go up Louisiana and Missouri border Louisiana Mississippi border through Arkansas Mississippi border. Then you get Tennessee Arkansas border. Then you get Missouri Kentucky border for a hot sec. Then you get Missouri Illinois border.
Oh, that would be bleak. That'd
And
be
then-
a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's going to ever be perfect. Then you get Illinois, Iowa border. Then you get
Also
Wisconsin, Minnesota border.
That would be so nice.
And then you end in Superior National Forest at Canada.
I would hike that. I
If
would
you
hike that
need
trail.
I
another
wouldn't.
Mexico to Canada trail, technically this starts at the Gulf of Mexico, not the land of Mexico, but it looks like one of the less desert, boring farm sections that you could add one in. So I'm putting mine there.
Yeah. What are the trails in either Louisiana or Mississippi?
Exactly.
Mississippi has some stuff.
Does it?
Louisiana I've never been to, but
Yeah. All right.
But nothing established, just like day hike
Yeah.
trails that I know of.
All right, my last 2, I'm going to have some honorable mentions. This one is very self-serving, but there have been so many times, my parents live in Boulder, where I'm like, I don't want to drive. I just want to like get there on foot. And there's no good trail from Golden to Boulder. And specifically, I want something in the foothills because it'd be fun to do that rolling section. And then I'm like, why stop there? There should be a trail that goes through the entire foothills of Colorado. But I know I'm getting ambitious here.
Would that be like Colorado Springs to Fort Collins?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be really sick.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
And you'd have so much town access along the way. Like, that would be, I think, a fun shoulder season through hike.
Yeah.
So, the foothills of Colorado Trail. My last one.
Yes, I was just about to tell you that. Obviously.
I'm going to go with... I also love the state of Washington. I think something that was like a horseshoe from either like the Northern Cascades or Central Cascades down kind of around, the Sound of Seattle, and then into the Olympics all the way out to the coast. How fun would that be? Through the rainforest, going from the Cascades to the rainforest to the ocean.
Sure.
Sign me the fuck up.
My next one is going to be like the Tahoe Rim Trail, where you're circling a body of water. But I think that this one should be the Great Lakes Rim Trail.
All the lakes.
So, yeah, it could be like a however many mile long hike.
Wonder how long that would be.
So yeah, I could see it being like 2,000. It looks like as long as the AT if you were to spread it out.
I'm going to guess
maybe even longer.
Yeah.
But I think not circling, but surrounding each lake. So you start wherever you want. Let's say Chicago, just because it's where I'm looking. Then if we're going counterclockwise, you basically walk the rim of Michigan, not including the little jutty out part. And then you go on the south side of Lake Erie, stop in Buffalo, go to a Bills game. Duh. Then you walk up, you like take a jaunt in Niagara Falls, and then you follow the south shore of Lake Ontario. You stop at my alma mater, Oswego. Then you go up north, you enter Canada, and then you go around the north shore of Lake Ontario, bop into Toronto, go back to Niagara Falls, and then you go on the north shore of Lake Erie, maybe, and then you pop up and you start going around Lake Huron. If you zoom in real close in the map, after you're around like the north part of Lake Huron, if you wanted to take a zero and go see these little islands in the middle, one is called Cockburn Island. That's
Sounds
funny.
dangerous.
Then you pop down, and then you cross the part where Lake Huron becomes Lake... no, you wouldn't go to Lake Michigan there. You'd go up over Lake Superior, Thunder Bay, down into Minnesota, again, Superior National Forest. You get into Duluth. You keep going around the south side of Lake Superior, and then you get over, you say hi to Michigan again, and then you come down like Green Bay, and then you come down Milwaukee, and you get back to Chicago on Lake Michigan. I think it could be done.
ChatGPT estimates that at 6,500 miles.
Light work. That's fine.
That feels farther than I would guess, but I also don't think that would be wrong.
Yeah.
Just take it at a run.
I mean, there's people doing calendar year triples.
That's true.
Yeah.
Show me a Great Lakes loop.
I feel like that covers, I was going to say something in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but I will change it now because I feel like the Great Lake Loops covers that.
Claimed.
I feel like North and South Dakota don't get enough love. I've never been, so I guess I don't give them enough love, but I would want something that goes from the Badlands to Teddy Roosevelt National Forest. I don't know what's in between the two of those. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's sad, but those are two places that I really want to go, but I don't because I am lazy and I don't want to drive between the two of them. So if I could just walk from maybe start, I think there's like a Wind Cave or whatever that national park
Wind
is.
Cave National Park.
Southwestern South Dakota, and then go up through the Badlands, and then
cool.
just do whatever else happens in South Dakota, and then hit North Dakota and go into the Theodore Roosevelt National Forest.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Teddy Roosevelt National Park's not very interesting.
Really?
I just went for like a jaunt. I hadn't been to North Dakota yet. It was the last one on my
I'm
contiguous U.S.
I'm saving it for last.
I went specifically, stopped in Fargo and had Panda Express. And then I went to TDNP, and there was like a tree. Mm-hmm. There was like some recommendations for some hikes, but it looked pretty flat. And
I love trees.
Boring.
I've heard that there's a place in North Dakota that if it's your last and you're traveling the state's journey, you can go and get a certificate that just says like, oh, I saved the best for last, because so many people will have North Dakota as their last.
That says something. If so many people leave it to last, what does that say? If we have any North Dakota listeners, tell me something worth seeing there, please.
Yeah. Maybe of interest, there is the South Dakota Centennial Trail.
Wow.
123 miles. Pony's done it.
Huh.
The Badlands are cool. Yeah. And Wind Cave National Park is really cool too.
Is that all three for all of us?
I think so.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly go through my honorable mentions. I want some long trail in the state of Hawaii. I don't care which island, but the only thing that there is the Kalalula Trail.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think 13 miles out and back.
Mm-hmm.
I want something longer than that. I wanted to like circumnavigate the entire island.
I want there to be a long trail that you have to swim at some point.
That'd be cool.
From one island to the next.
You could do the Alaska to Russia long trail.
There you go.
The Mississippi River long trail, or it's just the Mississippi River?
I don't know if I'd swim in that.
Yeah, based on the report that we got,
I'll just float the river.
Who paddled it? Shit. I'm racking my brain. We'll have to go through the Backpack Radio archives. Yeah. And my last one, excuse me, something better in Utah. I've heard a lot of people speak highly of the Uinta Highline Trail, so I'm not throwing shade on that, but some sort of a loop trail that incorporated like the Sawatch Range, I think would be really cool.
Yeah, like a Denver to Salt Lake. Could be cool.
Yeah.
Salt Lake to Moab.
Don't join him on this. I like you. Don't change that. Zach's a bad influence.
Mailbag.
Sorry, I gotta go back. I'm on a map. Hey, Zach and Chance, and whatever amazing guests you guys have there with you.
Yep.
Been listening to... Don't say yup like that just because she just agreed with you.
You don't think Katie's an awesome guest?
I do.
I'm taking this
with
personally.
an asterisk. She's got an asterisk next to it.
No, she's appreciating the way that you say Moab.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're appreciating that.
I am.
Hey, Zach and Chance, and whatever amazing guests you guys have there with you. Been listening to you guys for years, and you taught me so much about this wonderful backpacking world that I have fallen madly in love with. Need your opinion, as it seems I am overwhelmed with freedom and I need to pick a trail to do before summer is over. This comes out in November, so sorry already. I've been stationed in Alaska for the last 3 years with the military, and it's time for the end of my contract so that I can go adventure and be a civilian again. I want to drive down from Anchorage to meet my family in Jasper and Banff and Glacier and Yellowstone. But then I want to go for a hike by myself. I missed the weather window for the PCT SOBO, so the AT SOBO might be in the cards, but the cold weather scares me. So my brain went to the Tetons, the Sawtooths, the Olympics. I suppose the AZT would not be out of the question either. Part of me wants to go abroad to do the hot route Pyrenees. What are the best trails that I can complete from August to October here in the States or in Europe? There's so much that I just can't decide. Any advice? Thanks. Looking forward to hearing your opinions. You guys are amazing, and I'm grateful to have found this podcast. From Elaine.
I'm going to stick domestically because that's where I know more about, and I'm sure including Europe would make the list just so big. But based on the window of August to October, you've got some good options. Colorado Trail, I'd recommend aiming to be done by like the first week of October, and even that can be dicey, but I did a good chunk of the Colorado Trail in late September, and it was awesome. Long Trail is a great one. John Muir Trail, again, you want to aim to be done probably by the end of September. Could do a good chunk of the Pacific Northwest Trail. It's another one, probably mid-September is your deadline there. But I think you could also aim for any of the Triple Crown trails and see just how much you could bite off southbound. If you had to be, I'm assuming you said October. I don't know if that's the beginning or the end of the month, but conceivably, if you're moving quickly, you could do the entire PCT southbound. You have to be moving very quickly, probably similar for the CDT. I'm less qualified to speak on that. But yeah, I think any of those would work.
You think if they started the PCT southbound in October, they could do the whole thing?
I mean, the FKT is a month and a half. I did it in 100 days.
Yeah, but they'd get to the Sierra in like December.
What's that?
They'd get to the Sierra in like December.
I started in mid-July.
You're talking about starting in October.
No. August to October.
Oh, I thought you were saying start it in October.
No,
I was like, that seems like not good advice.
Yeah. So if they started on August 1st,
got it.
You'd have to be moving even faster than I was. And I was fast, at least for me.
Incredible shape.
For the CDT, you'd have to either flip or be willing to skip the San Juans or move very, very fast.
Yeah.
Because I've heard you have to kind of be out of there by October.
Yeah.
You could probably do the AT southbound if you started in August because you really just have to get through New England and then it just becomes cold.
Yeah, you don't have any like firm
danger.
Yeah, people will hike that to the following year.
But if you're listening to this and we've obviously missed August to October and now it's November and you're like, well, what could I still do? It doesn't need to be long. Great time of year for the Trans-Catalina Trail.
Sure.
Get a little 40-miler in, extend your summer slightly longer, and come home happy.
Yeah.
And the Ozark Trail, I think it's maybe less pretty once the leaves fall, but you can kind of do it year round.
She also mentioned Arizona Trail, and that would be a good October, November window too, southbound.
What time does the snow start in the desert in Arizona?
I haven't done it, not qualified, but I know that like the southbound window is like the October to November time frame. So I would imagine after November is probably where it starts to get a little bit dicey for folks. But yeah, let us know what you ended up doing or what you choose to do in the future.
Now would have been a good time for that Alaska Trail.
Yeah. If you guys want to have your mail read on this podcast, hit us up, podcast@thetrek.co. 5-star review. This is from, is this Mr. Ailey, M. Rayleigh 13, one of the two? New favorite podcast for the trails. I just recently came across your podcast and listened to the episode with Dr. Courtney Conley and was so impressed with what she had to share. As someone who walked the Camino Frances in April and May 2024, I'll be following your podcast for more education and inspiration. Thank you. No, thank you, Mr. Ailey 13. If you guys want to hear your review on this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us any number of stars, just not
1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, any number of stars. And if you guys want a Backpacker Radio sticker, send us a screenshot of your review and send that to podcast@thetrek.co, and we will get one your way. Super big thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Ben Love, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop,
Bugles.
Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Derek Cook, Eric Casper,
The Friendly Ghost.
Eric Hoffman, Jillian Daniels, Greg Knight, Greg McDaniel. Why did Greg Knight throw me off so bad? Griffin Hay, would you bring me a beer? Haley Buckingham.
Dallas.
Liz Seeger. Old Man Murph's Coffee Roasters. That's ommcr.com. Paulie's our guy. Patrick Ciancialo. Rebecca Brave. Sawyer Products. Spam. Timothy Hahn.
Solo.
And Tracy Trigger.
Buns.
That was a good one, too.
That was a good one, too.
You're
I'm on a roll.
Yeah, 2 in a row. Yeah. You can follow us at Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at Backpacker Pod on X, Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Chance.
You can find me on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey, on YouTube at Juliana Chauncey, and you can get my book, Hiking from Home, a long-distance hiking guide for family and friends, on Amazon.
Appalachian Trails and Pacific Crest Trails are my books, and we would both be appreciative of a review on Amazon. Subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts. Follow us on YouTube.
Hi, Internet.
What's up, YouTube? Reminder for the YouTube folks that you get to watch Vikings beard get shaved if we hit our $10,000 threshold, so be sure to donate. And that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.